Chapter 546. With the resources of the new planet at her disposal, she would not be stingy. Darkseid had conquered countless planets, and the Heavenly Father had also saved many of them. Their resources were far more abundant than Thea could imagine. She did not hold back at all. She threw all sorts of rare materials into the workshop. She also forced the god of forging out of the workshop to work. The hardcover version of the magic net was officially launched. She would build a node here and bury a runestone there. This guy who was more like a robot than a human was ordered around by her. Regardless of the cost, in just 10 days, the weave that enveloped the entire fourth world was set up by her. Sia directly blocked the access to the Apocalypse Star at the source and received a round of chuckling criticism from the Heavenly Father. In order to punish her for treating him differently and ignoring the principle of fairness, the Heavenly Father gave her a divine dagger, with the excuse that she was too weak in close combat and needed to practice more in the future. The dagger was indeed a good weapon for close combat. It would burn the enemy with the flames of justice for 2 hours after injuring them. Unless the person's authority in the domain of justice was higher than the Heavenly Father's, they would have no choice but to endure. Thea, who received the divine weapon, humbly accepted the Heavenly Father's criticism and said that she would follow his instructions next time. As for this incident, both of them pretended to forget about it. Her army expanded again. This time, she recruited 80,000 people, expanding the army to 100,000. It was now considered a small army. The magic net was not useful to the high-level gods. They absorbed power from the source and did not need to pass through her hands. However, it was much more useful to the ordinary citizens and the elite soldiers of the army. The soldiers of the 3 armies were the cream of the crop of the new gods. Many of them had gained the ability to cast spells with the help of the magic net. The army's combat power had increased by 10 to 20%. The 3 commanders were very busy. They practiced every day so that magic could be integrated into normal battles. Thea did not restrict the army from passing the dummy version of the magic study manual that she wrote to the ordinary people. She made it very clear that they could impart knowledge, but there had to be a transaction. Moreover, it had to be a fair transaction that the Heavenly Father valued. A large number of transactions began. The simple and honest new gods did not have the style of saying one thing in front of others and another behind their backs. They very honestly followed Sia's rules. While she was reaping the divine power of trade, the entire new god's combat power and morale began to rise rapidly. 6 days later, in the Heavenly Father's meeting hall, the Council of 9 gathered once again. This meeting had been called by the second-generation god, Orion. He made a passionate speech during the meeting, arguing that they should attack the Revelation Star while their morale was at its peak. Even if they didn't attack the Revelation Star, they should at least take down a few frontline strongholds. The 3 commanders and Thea remained silently waiting for the Heavenly Father to make a decision. The Heavenly Father was also pleased with the morale, but after thinking for a long time, he decided not to send troops. Orion was a little depressed, but he could not refuse his Heavenly Father's orders, so he could only restrain himself. Another day passed. Perhaps Darkseid had sensed the high morale on the other side, but Darkseid was the first to send out his troops. "Your Majesty, Ankakarya is under attack. Please allow me to go back and help." Wujia, the Heavenly Father's beloved general, who was dressed like a dwarf, asked for help. Thea had been here for almost a month. Many people had provided her with information in exchange for the dummy version of magic learning materials, so she had a good understanding of the situation. Ankakarya was Wujia's home planet. He had ascended to godhood in a similar situation as Thea, but that was billions of years ago. Furthermore, this planet was not in the universe that Thea came from. It was in another universe, a parallel universe. In comics there was a division of Earth 1, Earth 2 all the way to Earth 52, but this was not the case here. Neither the Heavenly Father nor Darkseid knew which planet Earth was. They had a way of using the mother box to differentiate the coordinates of space and time. Wujia's home planet had always been the territory of the new creation star. Now that they were being attacked, the Heavenly Father's face darkened. Thea realized that her new boss wanted to fight back. In this day and age, if one did not join in on the fun, one would be no different from a salted fish. She immediately stepped out of the formation to gain some reputation. "Your Majesty, I am willing to lead the magic army to assist Wujia in this battle." Wujia nodded to express his gratitude. Orion, who had always been at the forefront of the battle, realized that he was now third. He did not back down and dragged his good friend Ray along. We also apply to join the battle." Thea lowered her head and wanted to laugh when she saw this. Ray had a peaceful personality, which was rare among the new gods. It was because he had a bad friend like Olion that he often went to the front lines of battle. If he was not fast enough, he would have been killed long ago. When the Heavenly Father saw that all 4 of them had applied to join the battle, he turned to the goddess of assassination Pilatus, who was in charge of gathering information, and asked, "Who is the enemy sending?" The brave female assassin respectfully replied, "It's Darkseid's eldest son, Calabac. Perhaps the goddess of vengeance will also join the battle." The Heavenly Father estimated that the enemy would not only send Calabac. There were probably other gods hiding in the dark. However, the Heavenly Father had sent 4 gods. Other than Ray, who was slightly weaker in combat, the others were not weak. He immediately decided that Wujia would lead the team and Thea would assist him. They would bring their respective armies to Ankakeria. As for Olion and Ray, they would be there to help. Unlike Olion and Ray, who were alone, Thea and Wujia immediately left the meeting hall and went to gather their subordinates. Thea directly connected to all the mages through the magic net. Now, her army had begun to take shape, and the number of people had increased to 300,000. With the help of teleportation, her army gathered very quickly. Wujia, who was ranked first in the main army, was not slow either. The 2 of them gathered their troops and pulled Olion and Ray, who were just onlookers, together to open the sonic tunnel. Boom! There was a deafening sound. When everyone walked out of the tunnel, they had already arrived at Wujia's home planet. It was a mess. Thea could see apocalyptic demons with wings everywhere. Wujia's people looked very similar to him. They were all muscular and had green beards. They looked like dwarves who were a few sizes bigger. Unfortunately, they were facing an endless number of enemies and could barely resist. "Kill them all. Leave no one alive." Wujia, who was carrying a large hammer and riding a giant beast that looked like a lion, shouted loudly. His army was basically riding on giant beasts like this. Many people were imitating his style. Everyone had a large hammer and rushed into the enemy's midst to attack fiercely. "Let's go too. Everyone, follow me and adjust the target." Thea looked around with her supervision. Her magic net could not cover this place. However, she, Hay8, and Mitrin had stayed up late for 3 days to create a portable magic net. It was suitable for this kind of extraterrestrial battle. Today was the day to test it out. Chapter 547. The disadvantage of the portable magic net was that it could not cast too many spells. However, there was no need for them to use such high-level spells in a battle. When the number of fireballs, icicles, and lightning accumulated to a certain extent, their lethality was also very high. 8,000 meters to the southeast, the first team, follow my landing point and cast fireball. 12,100 meters to the west, the second team, cast icicle. The third team, help Yugo's army clear the ground targets. Each team had 100,000 people. Seeing 100,000 fireballs land on the enemy's head, the scene was spectacular. The small fries that were hit were burned to ashes in the air. The remaining fireballs landed on the ground, and the land within a radius of 10,000 miles was plowed by the magic army. Such a large amount of magic was concentrated in a small area, and it was a disaster for the local environment. The Apocalypse demons were made from captives from various planets and the Apocalypse planet's biological technology. These things had no magic resistance at all in Thea's eyes. A single fireball could kill 3 of them. If there was a battlefield damage statistics at this time, it would be found that the damage done by her troops was far greater than that of Yugo's cavalry. The 4 gods did not make a move. They would not waste their combat power on small fries. They were waiting for the real opponent. The magic army's speed of clearing the battlefield could be said to be the fastest. The endless Apocalypse demons were disrupted under the bombardment of various spells. Some of the monsters rushed too quickly, and when they reached the enemy, they found that their rear troops had been wiped out. Sia's idea was to cut off their Mercury-like offensive. Once the formation was broken, the remaining soldiers were just small fries who were fighting for themselves. The Heavenly Father's army could deal with these guys without suffering any losses. "O Lion, my dear brother, did you come from afar to ask me to grant you death?" A rough voice resounded in the distance. Before the voice died away, an extremely burly man with a height of 3 meters entered the field of vision. The man's brownish-black hair and beard were connected, like a lion's head. He wore black leather armor, and the exposed dark yellow muscles seemed to be cast in steel. His whole body exuded a strong aura of hostility. "Kalibak, today is the day you die." Olion was like an enraged warrior as he charged forward. There was a difference in size between the two of them, but their strength was almost equal. As the battle continued, the soldiers from both sides tacitly chose to distance themselves from each other. Thea watched the battle with great interest. This was her first time witnessing a battle between two new gods, and it was a battle between Darkseid's evil eldest son and Darkseid's righteous second son. The gods around them didn't seem surprised at all. They knew that this wasn't the first time these two had fought. Thea took a few glances and discovered some clues. Olion was much stronger than what she had sensed before. If Thea and Kalibak were to exchange positions, although she wouldn't lose, she wouldn't be able to take down Olion in a short period of time. Did he use some secret technique to increase his strength in a short period of time? "Is Orion that powerful?" she asked the ray of light beside her. The gentle ray of light didn't hide anything from her. Olion's godhood of violence can give him a lot of divine power, but he doesn't like to use it. Thea nodded. This was the blessing of the godhood of violence. It was obvious from the name that it had nothing to do with justice, so Olion had been deliberately suppressing it. Thea felt that Darkseid had suffered a great loss. He had given such an excellent son to the Heavenly Father, and now he was an enemy. The Dark Lord must be regretting it. She then looked at Kalibak, the god of torture, who was said to be on par with Superman. To be honest, she was a little disappointed. What did he mean by being on par with Superman? What a load of bull. This guy was no match for Superman at all. What was there to be proud of when he tied with Superman, who didn't dare to use his full strength? In the Alliance of Injustice, Superman could fight Darkseid one-on-one without any worries. Kalibak was no match for Darkseid. The guy with the lion's head was shouting loudly, but now he was suppressed by Olion in less than 30 moves. It was not difficult to predict his defeat. Seeing that the gods on her side were all watching and did not go up to attack, Sia felt that they had probably cultivated a kind of unwritten rule after hundreds of millions of years of fighting, and that was that they had to fight one-on-one. They couldn't attack together. Regardless of the outcome of the battle, other than the Heavenly Father and Darkseid, the other gods, including Thea, didn't have an overwhelming advantage over any other god. If they were allowed to attack together, the Council of Eight and Darkseid's elites would probably die out in less than 100 million years. In the remaining time, only the two of them would be left fighting alone. The scene was too bleak, and the gods, regardless of whether they were good or evil, consciously avoided such a scene. So even though Olion had the upper hand now, he didn't ask his friend Ray to help. Of course, Thea welcomed such a battle atmosphere. She didn't want to throw herself into a meat grinder at all. It took a lot of effort to become a god to reach her current level, and she cherished her life a lot. If she could live well, she wouldn't want to die in a corner with a drop of blood left. This was evident from the fact that Darkseid always sent his avatars to fight and never fought in person. The Dark Lord was evil, but he cherished his life even more than Thea. After straightening out the logic, Thea felt a lot more at ease. The Heavenly Father wouldn't attack Darkseid's elites, and the other gods wouldn't attack the Council of Nine. It seemed like they had been fighting for hundreds of millions of years, but in fact, they had been consciously limiting the scale of the battle. Just as she was wondering if she should just slack off and get through this battle, another god jumped out. "Is this the new god of the new planet of creation? It's been a long time since I've seen such a young god." "Qu'est-ce, said a white-haired old woman who was 1.8 meters tall. She was wearing golden fish scale armor and a red cape. "It's Granny Benevolent. She's the god of deception. She's very good at close combat and mind control magic. You have to be careful," Ray whispered and gave her an encouraging look. "Ha! What's the meaning of this?" Thea was a little speechless. "I didn't say I would accept the challenge. Is there an unspoken rule here that I have to accept a challenge?" She looked at the old blackmailer. No, the kind granny opposite her. Her face fully explained what it meant to be repulsive. It was very similar to the image of Granny Roan in the television series. She was ruthless, vicious, mean, and a little treacherous. Granny Benevolent was born with a sarcastic face. It wasn't difficult for the Apocalypse Star to know Thea's information. The new planet of creation had spies on the Apocalypse Star, and Granny Benevolent must have done the same. She could even find out about trivial matters, so there was no reason for her not to know about something like this. Chapter 548. Sia handed over the command of the army to her assistant, Bika. Bika was the future wife of a lion and the daughter of the scientist, Simon. Simon was a spy sent by the new creator star to the Apocalypse Star. He was an outstanding scientist and the inventor of the Mother Box. From all angles, Bika could be said to be a trusted aide of Father Heaven. In the beginning, her spiritual power was twice that of an ordinary person. She was also a magic type who had ascended to godhood, so spiritual power was her strongest attribute. At the same time, she had many emotions gathered in her body. Only she could brainwash others. No one could brainwash her. Others might be afraid of the kind grandmother's mental control, but she was not. She put on her divine robe and held a lightning whip in her hand. She rose up and stared at the old woman. "You old dog of Darkside, you should be punished for the sake of all the innocent people you have killed." Thea did not know what the old woman had done, but she could not give up on the advantage of being in the righteous faction. She was not just talking. Her hands were not idle either. She threw a lightning bolt filled with lightning magic at the old woman. As the trainer of the goddess of vengeance, the kind grandmother's skills could be said to have been tempered thousands of times. She was not afraid, and with a punch she scattered the lightning beam, and then pulled herself out and began to attack. "Little girl, you are still too young. Come to me. My training will give you unparalleled strength. Don't you remember? I am your friend." The kind grandmother's voice had a hint of bewitchment. This shameless old man was spouting nonsense in front of him. He was really sick of it. Wasn't it just brainwashing? Who was afraid of who? Thea suppressed the irritation caused by the old woman's words and immediately retaliated. "Old woman, you are already so old, yet you are still trying to act pitiful. You really need to be pitied." The kind grandmother brainwashed people every day, so she was very resistant to this kind of mental suppression. She used a little strength to get rid of Thea's pity. If you don't want pity, then what about fear? You are in the evil faction. You must be afraid. Thea switched to fear, which she was best at. As a native of Apocalypse, the kind grandmother had walked step by step through mountains of corpses to reach her current position. It was not an exaggeration to say that her willpower could be described as iron. Did she feel fear? A little, but not much. Logically speaking, this move wouldn't do much damage to her, but Thea's shout was so loud that everyone could hear it. This was bad. Darkside was the Dark Lord, the god of destruction of many worlds, the destroyer of the underworlds, and the destroyer of the underworlds. He had a whole bunch of titles on him. How could he not be afraid when such an evil big shot appeared in front of him every day? Do you still want to survive? It was like saying that the Heavenly Father was kind to the Heavenly Father but evil to Darkside. This had nothing to do with combat prowess. It was a serious political issue. If the kind grandmother did not want to go back and be executed, from a politically correct point of view, she had to be afraid. Even if she was not afraid, she had to say that she was afraid, and she had to be extremely afraid. The kind grandmother's acting was really good. She did not exaggerate at all. In a thousandth of a second, she pretended to be dumbfounded, and Thea took advantage of this opportunity to cut a large wound on her arm. The short sword that the Heavenly Father had given to the kind grandmother made it impossible for her wound to heal. The fire of justice continued to burn, and this made the old woman's heart ache. She was very experienced in dealing with the fire of justice. She wrapped the wound with a black bandage, temporarily suppressing the fire of justice. It would take a lot of effort to eradicate it. Darkside did not have the patience to treat his subordinates. The kind grandmother did not dare to play mind control with Thea anymore. When she saw Thea holding the whip, she felt that Thea was most likely not good at close combat. She immediately used her strength to attack Thea's weakness. She wanted to salvage the situation. Of course, Thea would not let her do as she wished. It was very dangerous to engage in close combat without knowing her opponent's moves. The gods had lived for countless years, and each of them had rich combat experience. It was impossible to rely on the thousands of years of martial arts on Earth to suppress her. The best plan was to increase the distance between them and observe her opponent's moves. Thea did not care about the gains and losses of each move. She swung the whip so hard that it was impenetrable. At the same time, she constantly used magic to test her opponent's various attributes. The kind grandmother had high resistance to all kinds of magic. Her only weakness was that her resistance to the light element was a little weak. Sia immediately began a fierce attack. Light arrow spell, flash spell, and the magically modified version of the six-staff prison of light were all thrown over. The kind grandmother struggled to break free, but the price she paid was a bloody gash on her face from Thea's lightning whip. After losing 2 moves in a row, she quickly calmed down. She let out a shrill scream and temporarily forced Thea to retreat. Darkseid also knew that his eldest son, Kalibok, was brainless. Although Kalibok was the leader, the real power of the army was in the hands of the kind grandmother. He had originally invited Thea to fight because he saw how powerful the enemy's magic army was. On one hand, he wanted to test the strength of this new god. On the other hand, he also wanted to interrupt the enemy's magic army. Unfortunately, it was a long and fruitless battle. Now that she saw that Thea did not take advantage of the situation to attack, she finally had the time to look up and observe the battlefield. The 2 Furies who came with her had already entered the battlefield. Bernard, who was armed with a long spear and a sword, was barely able to fight to a draw with a ray of light. Heavy Step, who was wearing a pair of metal boots, was unfortunately matched up against Uja, who was even more powerful. Uja, who hated the fact that his people were slaughtered by these people, waved his sledgehammer vigorously. As the leader of the 3 armies in the father's camp, Uja, who was also the strongest in terms of combat power, was facing off against the Furies, who were at the bottom of Darkseid's camp. The result was obvious. Heavy Step was struggling to hold off the angry Uja. On the other hand, Olion and Karibok were fighting. Olion did not dare to use too much violence, so both sides were tied again. However, Karibok was injured, so it seemed that he would lose in the long run. "Retreat!" the kind grandmother shouted. "Stop them!" Uja shouted at the same time. Sia didn't have much confidence in defeating this old woman, and even if she could, she didn't want to stand out too much. It wouldn't be a good thing to kill the enemy's general as soon as she arrived, no matter how she looked at it. However, now that Uja had given the order, she had to deal with it. She was already prepared, so she immediately activated the spell that she had been silently chanting. "Stop!" A huge mouth that could cover the sea and the sky appeared behind the benevolent grandmother and bit down on her. This was the shadow of the crocodile god, Sobek, that Thea had intercepted from the River of Time. This animal god in Egyptian mythology had amazing bite strength, and it was impossible to kill it. Even if Thea's real body was here, she would not be able to kill the kind grandmother, not to mention that this was just a shadow formed from Thea's divine power. However, it would not be a problem to trap her for a while. The old woman put her foot under her chin and her hand on her upper jaw. She was struggling with the crocodile god. On the other hand, Olion no longer cared about the damage to his state of mind. He activated the power of violence again, and an endless stream of power began to crush Karibok. Uja, who was beating up a child, shouted excitedly. He was already much stronger than his opponent in all aspects. Now that he was excited, his combat power had increased by another 10%. He used his usual method of attacking with great force. Now that he was facing Uja, who was even stronger than him, there was no way he could fight back. Sia trapped the kind old lady, so she naturally wouldn't just stand by and watch. She used the magic beam cannon that she used to deal with Horus that day. Divine power that was even stronger than that day was condensed between her fingers, and she didn't stop attacking the trapped old lady. The kind grandmother, who was now a living target, had to resist the crocodile god's bite while dodging fatal attacks. This made her very embarrassed. After dodging 2 shots in a hurry, the crocodile's bite became tighter. Her situation did not improve. Instead, it became worse. Chapter 549. Ah! There was a scream in the distance. Heavy Stomp was hit in the face by Wuja's hammer. Wuja did not wait for the other party to get up. He ran over and hit the other party twice with his hammer, knocking the other party unconscious. The army commander's victory made his cavalry army cheer even louder. The entire battlefield could feel their excitement. The kind grandmother knew that she was going to lose today. She immediately stopped dodging Thea's finger gun and escaped from the crocodile god's mouth at the cost of her right shoulder being pierced. She shouted something that sounded like the wind was blowing and ran into the distance. In the face of a disaster, they ran away separately. This was their way of doing things. It was impossible for them to cover each other and retreat slowly. Bernard, the goddess of vengeance, who was fighting against the light, seemed to have activated some secret technique. He instantly increased his speed and escaped into the distance. Karabak also escaped the battlefield at the cost of a broken arm. The 3 gods were very strange. They all ran in different directions. This made Thea slightly stunned. When she wanted to chase after them, there was a sonic boom in the distance. The three gods quickly went into the tunnel. Haha, these dirty maggots are good at escaping. Goddess of trade and wealth, don't mind them. Wuja saw the embarrassed expression on her face and comforted her. Although Sia wasn't prepared to fight them head-on, she didn't expect them to run away so quickly. Now that she heard Ulja's words of comfort, she also expressed her stance of upholding justice and not rubbing sand in her eyes. She also congratulated the other party for capturing a goddess of vengeance alive. Haha! You all have contributions. All of you have contributions. Uja, who looked like a magnified version of the dwarf warrior, grinned widely and laughed happily. With his combat strength, he was able to deal with a member of the Goddess of Vengeance battle team who did not have a divine seat and was more like some kind of fake god. It was not difficult for him to obtain the achievement of capturing the other party alive. The two high-level opponents were stopped by Olion and Thea. He, as the strongest on his side, defeated the weakest on the enemy's side. He got off to a good start and deserved some credit. The three deities from the Apocalypse Star had left the battlefield, and the remaining soldiers were no match for the new Genesis Star's army, and they all scattered after a little resistance. The new planet of creation did not pursue them. These soldiers were all produced in an assembly line, and they all carried the mother box. The gods were not interested in such enemies. They reiterated the principle that this planet was protected by the Heavenly Father. They pressed the Goddess of Vengeance down and opened the sonic tunnel to return to the new planet of creation. The news had already spread to the rear. This was undoubtedly a great victory. Wuja was envied by his colleagues. It was because capturing the other party's god was something worth celebrating. He happily handed the captive over to the Heavenly Father. As for whether the big boss would reform, brainwash, or deal with the captive, even if he was a trusted aide, he wouldn't say anything. The entire new creation planet fell into a sea of celebration. Many people sang and danced as if it was a festival. In order to reward Thea for her achievements, the Heavenly Father officially appointed her to establish the fourth army of the new planet of creation, the Magic Army. In the next few days, the new army had such a good foundation, and the recruitment process was very smooth. A large number of people with magic talent who were previously eliminated because they were not good at close combat joined her army. Many of these people were the reserves of the three major armies. They were all very strong. Now that they had the opportunity to join the main army, they all forgot to eat and sleep to learn magic. Thea stayed on the new planet of creation for another half a month. The Earth clone sent news that something big seemed to have happened. She also missed Diana a little. After taking care of the matters at hand, she informed the Heavenly Father and opened the sonic tunnel to return to Earth. They were all deities, and the Heavenly Father only needed to be present during meetings and battles. Just like how light traveled between different universes every day, and how Mitron ran around the universe to obtain knowledge, the Heavenly Father couldn't restrain him. There was no discipline here, and it was fine as long as they could contact each other at critical moments. Boom! With a loud explosion, Thea returned to Earth. Her tunnel opened in the Batcave. Previously, when Batman contacted her clone, he only said that the situation was serious and didn't talk about the specifics. Batman wasn't the only one in the Batcave. Zatanna, who was wearing a small purple suit and fishnet stockings, was also here. Both of them expressed surprise at the way she suddenly appeared. "This isn't magic, right?" Batman asked his childhood sweetheart Zatanna. "No, there's no magical fluctuation." At this time, Thea was wearing her original clothes. Zatanna didn't know that the two of them had met before. She looked at the transmission for a while and was sure that it wasn't any transmission she knew. Before she had time to think about the transmission, she was attracted by Thea's appearance. After ascending to godhood, the young lady's appearance had reached true perfection in the literal sense. Even though Zatanna was a woman, she was still stunned by Shay's beauty. There was no need to be as cold as ice when doing business. Shay's temperament now gave people a subtle sense of closeness. Even though she hadn't spoken, the originally cold Batcave had warmed up by 2 degrees because of Shay's arrival. "Oh, Miss Zatanna, right? I've heard a lot about you." Thea took the lead to greet her. Her refreshing tone gave Zatanna the illusion that she was meeting some country's leader. Zatanna thought that the other party's identity as a billionaire gave her an illusion. The appearance of the two of them was not on the same line at all. Zatanna didn't even have a trace of jealousy. "I've also heard a lot about Dr. Quinn. You're even more beautiful in person than on TV. Zatanna said as she bowed slightly without realizing it. Thea laughed. You two are here? I'm not disturbing you, am I? She pointed at the two people who were only a few centimeters away from each other. Zatanna smiled awkwardly. Batman's facial muscles twitched slightly. The originally tense atmosphere relaxed. Tell me, what's the matter? Mage Zatanna is here too. Is it about the mystical side? Thea asked calmly. She had been to the Batcave many times and was very familiar with this place. No, I was just talking to Bruce about this. It's not about mages. Before Batman could speak, Zatanna interrupted. Thea looked at Batman with a head full of question marks. Why did you ask me to come here? It all started a month ago. Batman's voice was a little dry. After he finished speaking, he turned on several screens behind him and introduced them to Thea. First is Idaho. Many farm owners found that their crops withered overnight, but it didn't attract attention at the time. Next is Utah. These are the hunters who fled there. Batman pointed at the two young people who appeared on the screen. They were holding shotguns in their arms. The video was taken by a third person behind them. The video was very clear. The purpose was to capture their heroic looks so that they could brag about it to the little girl in the future. The two of them were aiming at a wild deer. From the side, there was no problem. Just as they were about to shoot, the wild deer turned its face. Half of the deer's face was completely rotten. A large amount of diseased tissue was densely packed on its body. The wild deer saw the hunters attacking the two of them like crazy. The video ended there. Also in Wyoming, there are black clouds of mosquitoes and flies raging. In California, there are people who saw a large number of deformed people staggering on the road. Also, Batman pointed at the strange situation on the screen and introduced it to her. Such supernatural things should be in your field of expertise. You can't let Superman deal with it, right? Batman stared at the two girls and asked. Zatanna's expression was ugly. The images were too disgusting, especially the black clouds made of mosquitoes and flies. It made her very uncomfortable. Thea, whose obsession with cleanliness had become more serious after she became a god, also felt disgusted. Most importantly, she knew about this incident. If she was not mistaken, this seemed to be a major incident. Chapter 550. The descent of the Rotten Kingdom was the green of all things, the red of all things, and the black of decay. It seemed to be a problem of the ecological balance. She just didn't expect it to happen so early. In her impression, the descent of the Rotten Kingdom should be an event after the day of solstice. Whether it was triggered early or accidentally, she still needed to observe further. Looking at your expression, you know something? Batman had been observing Thea's subtle expressions. I don't know if I'm right, but I'm sure this isn't something done by evil mages. The wastelands and zombies you mentioned just now can be done by mages in theory, but it takes a lot of effort. In this day and age, who has nothing better to do than to compete with farms? I think this is caused by the imbalance of all things on Earth. Mage Zatanna, you think so too, right? That's right. Do you know the reason? The mage's curiosity was bigger than a cat's. Zatanna only thought about it from her own point of view, so she didn't know the inside story. Now that she heard Thea saying that she had an answer, Zatanna's eyes immediately lit up. Probably. Do you know where the swamp monster is? This should be his business. The swamp monster had been hanging out with Lady Xanadu for a long time, so Zatanna should know him. As an onlooker, Batman couldn't wait to record her words and analyze them word by word in the future. He was very unhappy with this kind of thing that he didn't understand. His scrutinizing eyes kept moving back and forth between the two girls. You're talking about Dr. Alec Holland? I heard that he returned to normal 2 years ago and went to live a normal life. Zatanna's answer made Thea's eyes widen. What the hell? The incarnation of the green of all things retired and went home. Was he fired by the tree council formed by those drama queens? No, the tree spirits? Or did he just quit? Thea sighed with a lot of questions. Seeing Batman's eyes that seemed to say that he wouldn't let her off if she didn't explain it clearly, Thea felt that she still had to explain it to him. Moreover, looking at Zatanna's expression, she was afraid that she didn't know much about it either. After thinking about it, she decided to start from the beginning. As far as I know, the swamp monster is the embodiment of the green of all things. The green of all things, the red of all things, the black of decay, the ash of withering, the bacteria of division and the metal spirit form the most basic balance of our world. Zatanna was a little dumbfounded. She only knew about the green of all things, and this was the first time she had heard about the rest. Batman reacted quickly. You said before that the balance was broken? Is it because of that swamp monster? Thea hesitated for a moment. I'm not sure. It doesn't seem to be something that can be explained by one step and one step back. It's very complicated. I've never paid much attention to the things between them. By the way, the big zombie that we fought outside Gotham that day represented the Ash of Withering. These are the ones in front of us. Thea pointed at a few screens. It should be the Black of Decay. However, in my opinion, the Black of Decay is also the foundation of the material world. Although they don't have the concept of good and evil like we do, they shouldn't be doing something like this. The ones in front of us look like they've lost control. Someone's controlling them from behind the scenes. Batman immediately thought of this key point. Thea couldn't analyze it either. She could only analyze the problem in detail. She didn't dare to guarantee that the timing didn't match up. Just as they were about to discuss the next step, one of Batman's communicators rang. He looked at it and said to Thea, "It's the president." Thea knew that Batman had always been in contact with the higher-ups. As more and more people knew about her true identity, she had no intention of hiding it. She nodded calmly. Zatanna chose to avoid the call. Soon, the president's old face appeared on the centermost screen. Batman-o? Professor Quinn is here too. Mr. President, you look good. Thea greeted him cheerfully. She was now a god. Although the Black of Decay was troublesome, it wasn't enough to make her panic. Mr. President's inner thoughts were, I don't look good at all. This unlucky president had his life reduced by 2 years for every year he was in office, and 10 years for every year he was in office. He really had too many problems. He smiled bitterly and replied with a few words. Then he got to the point. A terrible incident happened in Louisiana. CNN is reporting it. I've sent the National Guard to set up martial law in that area. However, horrifying disasters are happening all over the world. Birds in the metropolis are dying in droves. The cattle farm in Seaside City seems to have caught some kind of plague. All the cattle are. You're all superheroes, so I want to ask you, what should I do? While he was talking, Thea was not idle. She used her personal computer to connect to the Quinn Group's satellite. A huge amount of data began to gather. They were mainly concerned about the United States, but Thea saw the whole world. This was a worldwide natural disaster. The Brazilian rainforest, the African grassland, and other countries were affected to varying degrees. If the Black of Decay was allowed to wreak havoc and turn into a country of decay, a dead and rotting world, then there would be no ghost trade or ghost wealth. This was simply destroying Thea's job. She couldn't tolerate it. Mr. President, don't worry. I'll take care of this. Thea interrupted the president who was complaining to Batman. The president praised her for taking care of everything before hanging up. The situation is very serious. Where do we start investigating? Batman glanced at the CNN report that the president mentioned. The roads were completely paralyzed, and thousands of citizens were covered in rotten flesh. They wandered between the cities and the countryside like zombies in Resident Evil. The aerial footage also showed some former citizens who wandered near the cordon and were shot into sieves. The whole social order could collapse at any time. Thea pondered for a moment. The incarnations of the green of all things and the red of all things must be found. Dr. Alec Holland is the key. Put him first. Find him immediately. This kind of person with a name was too easy to find. When Thea was about to teleport, Batman stopped her and said that he also wanted to go. I don't know what happened to you, but I can feel that you are getting further and further away from humans. This is a human matter. I have to get involved. Thea was fine with it. Batman could always come up with some strange things. She might have to rely on him in the future. At the same time, Zatanna was also very interested. The three of them could go together. Instead of using the sonic boom channel, Thea chose to teleport directly. Zatanna also knew teleportation. She immediately felt that the teleportation was extraordinary. Many questions were buried in her heart, waiting for the opportunity to ask. They came to a remote town in Louisiana. Dr. Alec Holland's house was not far from the town, and the large-scale zombie wave was less than 100 miles away from here. It was obvious that there was some inevitable connection between the two. All the humans in the town closed their doors. The three of them quickly found the cabin not far away. Batman gently pushed the door open. There was only a middle-aged man in the room. He was doing some experiment with his head down. Chapter 551. Dr. Holland, the world needs your help. Batman said stiffly. He didn't have a good impression of this kind of person who didn't do their job and turned the world into a mess. Although that saying wasn't popular in this world, Batman had always been an example of what the greater the power, the greater the responsibility meant. To have the power but not use it, this was a kind of cowardice in his eyes. The middle-aged man turned around. His face was full of fatigue as he looked at the three uninvited strangers. He didn't know Zatanna, the swamp monster, and his own memories weren't completely integrated. Plus he had been hiding from the world for 2 years after he recovered. He hadn't seen Thea either. The only person he knew was the famous Batman. I knew you would come to me. You want the swamp monster to help, but I can't do it now. I really can't. The Green of all things has already abandoned me. They want to punish me. All the blame is my fault. I didn't want it to be like this. The middle-aged man was in pain as he spoke incoherently. It was obvious that he knew the current crisis the world was facing. His kind nature was whipping him every minute and every second. He wanted to stop all of this, but unfortunately, without the power of the swamp monster, he was just an ordinary middle-aged man. The swamp monster helped Thea purify her bloodline. It could be said that it gave her the first bit of help. Although the source was at the behest of Shang-Du, Thea had always remembered this favor. She didn't want to force the other party too much. She pulled back Batman, who wanted to beat him up. Doctor, maybe you don't remember me, but I still have to say, even if you can't turn into a swamp monster for the time being, you can still help. We need the ecological restoration reagent you developed. As long as this reagent is sprayed all over the world, it can temporarily stop the spread of the black decay. You're going to use technology to solve this problem? Batman immediately became spirited. Technology was good. He was good at it. It can only be called containment. I need to spend time to find the real cause. And the amount of reagent must be precisely controlled. It's not a good thing for the green of all things to spread to the world. You don't mind if I bring the doctor to your Batcave, right? Batman couldn't mind even if he wanted to. Thea told Dr. Holland her plan. You also know about the darkness of decay? Who are you? Thea didn't have time to explain to him. She brought the three of them back to the Batcave. Batman immediately asked Dr. Holland to study how to standardize the reagents. If they were to rely on the two of them to do it by hand, it would be too late. Zatanna, who had thought that there would be a magic war, was disappointed. Using technology to solve problems was not cool at all. Thea began to call the heads of state of several countries. All the large biopharmaceutical companies around the world stopped working and prepared to concentrate on producing reagents. The logistics department began to prepare the raw materials. Several rocket centers also began to prepare. As long as the production here was completed, they would pull the materials onto the rocket and launch it into the sky. Batman's reputation as a hack was well deserved. As soon as Thea finished coordinating several aspects, he settled the production process. Several major biotech companies, including Wayne Enterprises and Quinn Enterprises, immediately began manufacturing like crazy. This was a battle for ecology. They didn't have to do it together. They launched batches after batches. The green reagents began to be sprayed all over the world with the help of rockets. Superman also joined in midway. He carried several tons of reagent barrels and threw them into the disaster areas. The effect was immediate. A large number of plants grew crazily and automatically suppressed the spread of the darkness of decay. For 3 whole hours, there was no more supernatural phenomenon around the world. The world's leaders celebrated. This was not a plague, but it was worse than a plague. It was too scary. If it could infect ordinary people, it could naturally infect them too. No one wanted to become a walking corpse. While they were celebrating, the people in the Batcave were still gloomy. This was only the first step. They hadn't found the mastermind behind the scenes, and they couldn't guarantee that the reagents launched would reach a balance with the ashes of decay. How could it be possible for Batman to calculate a balance between the two without a formula or theorem? Thea also felt that it was a bit difficult for Batman to calculate blindly. She asked Dr. Holland, that tree council or something, they should know the details of the entire incident. Or they could make you become a swamp monster again. Connecting to the green of all things should also allow you to understand the development of the incident, right? The middle-aged Dr. Holland's face was still gloomy. I don't know where you heard the name Tree Council, but I have to tell you with regret. If they don't contact me, I won't be able to enter that world. You won't be able to contact it either. Thea sneered in her heart. What was so great about a few tree ants? Wasn't it just a subspace? These green of all things and red of all things were very similar to origins. They were most likely wild origins from billions of years ago. It was only through the erosion of time that they combined with part of Gaia's will that they finally awakened their own consciousness and became something else. Now that they had become a part of the foundation of the world, there was no longer any possibility of them being absorbed. Thea could definitely trace back to the source to find this subspace, but it would be very troublesome. She had a better way. As long as I give you some green of all things, you'll be able to communicate with that place again, right? Thea asked the middle-aged doctor. You still don't understand what I mean. They rejected me and took back my power. I really want to help, but Thea raised her hand to interrupt him. The green of all things was very impressive, but it wasn't to the point where it could be used to dominate the entire universe. Furthermore, without Butcher Zhang, who wouldn't eat a pig with hair? Dr. Holland looked as if his entire family had died. He probably thought that he was the only one who could communicate with the green of all things. Thea contacted Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy, who was in Gotham, quickly arrived at the Batcave. This was her second time here. Poison Ivy still didn't dare to look at Thea, but she didn't mind. She glanced at Zatanna. The magician in fishnet stockings made her take a few more glances. Their gazes met in the air, mixed with some indescribable meaning. Doctor, look at her. She should also have the green of all things, right? Thea asked Dr. Holland with certainty. The middle-aged man's eyes widened. Of course, it wasn't because of Poison Ivy's appearance, but her essence. Although it was a little strange, Poison Ivy did have the essence of the green of all things. It was as bright as a lamp in his eyes. He noticed Poison Ivy's abnormality, and Poison Ivy also noticed his uniqueness. Thea, why did you ask me to come? This guy, see if you can give him a small amount of energy, Thea said, pointing at the doctor. Poison Ivy didn't know anything about the green of all things. From Thea's understanding, Dr. Holland was an official employee, and Poison Ivy was a hacker who took the access card. Now that Dr. Holland was fired by the company, he wanted to go back and apologize to his boss. However, he was rejected and refused to listen to his explanation. Therefore, his last resort was to ask for Poison Ivy's help. Although the way to obtain it was different, the essence of the power was the same. Poison Ivy just had to give Dr. Holland a little green leaf, and he would be able to extract the green of all things that he could use. This is enough. I've found the entrance to the green of all things. At this moment, many vines suddenly appeared on Dr. Holland's body, and many ancient patterns appeared on his face. He remembered his mission and didn't waste any energy on his body. Instead, he immediately communicated with the green of all things. He only closed his eyes for a moment, and he established a connection with the other side. Using this connection, he opened a small gap in the green of all things. I want to see what the green of all things is. Thea had been tracking his spiritual signal for a long time. Seeing Dr. Holland open a small gap, she immediately activated her divine power and chose to force her way in. Chapter 552. Dr. Alec Holland was dumbfounded. His eyes were blank as he said, "It's impossible for outsiders to enter the green of all things," Thea scoffed. It was true that ordinary people couldn't enter, but for a god, a subspace couldn't stop her at all. After testing the vastness of the space on the other side, she used all her strength and squeezed her body and mind into the space. She even dragged Batman, Zatanna, and Poison Ivy into the space. In the end, she even called out to the middle-aged doctor, "Dr. Holland, come in, your old friends are waiting for you." Dr. Holland could only smile bitterly. He felt that his old friends were going to be in trouble today, so he walked in with the mentality of watching a good show. Yes, Thea used her divine power to force open a big hole. Usually he would have to crawl in, but this time he could walk in. Entering the green world he was familiar with, even though he had already decided not to be a swamp monster, Dr. Holland still felt the nostalgia and reluctance of the whole world. The whole world cheered for his return. This was his world, and he was born to be a part of it. But before he could sigh, trouble came knocking on his door. A green humanoid monster roared at him. "Alec Holland, how dare you bring an outsider in here?" Dr. Holland felt wronged. Did I bring this here? Are you blind? Can't you see that I'm the last one? He immediately looked at Thea, who was looking around. No matter how slow he was, he could still notice this woman's abnormality. Now that he had regained some of the green of all things, part of his memory of being a swamp monster was restored in Dr. Holland's mind. It was just that he didn't connect the Thea from many years ago to the present. Her appearance and temperament had changed too much. Back then, Thea's appearance was at most 80 points, but now it was 100, and that was only because the upper limit was 100. It was impossible for the two to be connected. What is this place? It seems to be rejecting me and trying to win me over at the same time. What a strange feeling. Poison Ivy whispered to Thea. Don't worry about it. You have nothing to do with this place. This space was very vast. Even with her supervision, she couldn't see the boundary. It was more like a mirror world based on the main world. Thea looked at a few strange-looking green humanoid plants not far away. They were the previous swamp monsters. The use of the green of all creation was not without a price. Every chosen incarnation would enter this place after death and become a member of the so-called Tree Council. From Thea's point of view, this place was very similar to the seraphic space. As long as one was recognized, they would be able to obtain extraordinary power while they were still alive. The price was that they would have to come here to lie as corpses after death. Thus, Poison Ivy should continue to live happily as an unregistered resident. Her gaze, which automatically carried a hint of pity, made the tree spirits extremely unhappy. We are very happy living in the green of all things. What kind of gaze is that? Thea looked back at Batman. His bat suit looked strange against the green. Batman shook his head, indicating that he didn't want to talk. You should know about the changes in the outside world. I don't know why you are so indifferent. The black of decay has won. Not only will the life on Earth perish, but you will also perish, Thea said to the tree spirits. Human, you are too young. You don't understand the mysteries of nature. The leader of the tree spirits was interrupted by the abnormality in the space before he could finish his sentence. Thea was so angry that she laughed. The mysteries of nature of ghosts. This bunch of blind fools. Her sneer was extremely soft. However, the entire space was filled with dense fog because of her sneer. The air was filled with a murderous aura. The weeds where they were standing withered, the trees collapsed and weathered. The vines were like living creatures, hiding far away. The forest that was originally full of vitality was forcefully cleared into a wasteland thousands of meters wide just because of a sneer. You dare to attack in the green of all things. Two impatient tree spirits were furious. However, they were pulled back by the leader of the tree spirits. He asked with uncertainty, You? Which goddess are you? We have never had any dealings with the divine realm. You don't need to know where I come from. I am trying to reason with you. Thea was extremely pleased. These tree spirits that weren't even souls. If she didn't slap them in the face, they wouldn't talk nicely. I don't care what conflicts you had in the past. Right now, the entire world needs Alacolin's power. The humans in the outside world released a large amount of environmental reagents. Your green of all things should benefit the most. I request that you give him power again, Thea said firmly as she pointed at Dr. Holland. As for whether he was willing or not, she didn't have the time to care. Dr. Holland and this bunch of tree spirits were like a couple in a conflict. Both sides were entangled and neither side wanted to give in. This was why the situation had developed to such an uncontrollable state. Thea was prepared to use force to suppress it. You can talk about it later when you have the time. Both sides were a little hesitant. However, Dr. Holland was a kind person. He was worried about the situation in the outside world and took the initiative to admit his mistake. Finally, he got the permission of the green of all things back. Thea felt a little emotional as she looked at the swamp monster that had turned back into a green giant. Many years ago, she thought that it was like a celestial being. Now it was just like that. It was similar to her initial guess. When she entered this space, she realized that this was indeed an origin. Or rather, it used to be an origin. Now that it had changed so much, it naturally couldn't help anyone ascend to godhood. However, after a long period of time, these mutated origins found a way to use their own power. That was to choose an ordinary person as an incarnation to control this power. Currently, the swamp monster looked like it had fused with a fake origin in Thea's eyes. If she wanted to forcefully define it, it could be called a fake god. From a macro perspective, it was similar to the Vengeance Squad that Granny Benevolent trained. It didn't have a divine position of its own. It looked bright on the outside but was actually empty. Just as the few of them were about to leave, Thea suddenly asked, "Does the green of all things know why the black of decay is expanding?" Originally, it was just a casual question and she didn't expect to get an answer. She didn't expect the other party to actually know. The old tree spirit who was the leader angrily said, "Humans are too impudent. For the past 2 months, they've been madly excavating minerals from all over the world, producing steel and iron. The living space of plants has been compressed to the extreme. The balance has been directly broken. How could the black of decay give up on this opportunity?" Oh, Thea felt that the old tree spirit's words made a lot of sense. Then, she noticed that Batman and Poison Ivy were looking at her strangely. She was a little puzzled. Why are they looking at me? Her thoughts quickly collided with each other. From the old tree spirit's words about steel and iron, she analyzed the closest answer. Could it be that my Pacific Rim project pushed the humans to go on a rampage and destroy the environment? Her neck stiffened as she looked at Batman with a guilty conscience. The other party nodded at her very discreetly. Thea could only make a face expression. So the source of all this was because of her. Chapter 553. Miss Thea knew the cruel truth, but she was not embarrassed at all. She left the green of all things expressionlessly. Since the environment was already destroyed, there was no point in saying anything else. Returning to the Bat Cave, the swamp monster who had regained his power could now sense the details of the natural world. Using the information he had, Batman could finally come up with a general spray concentration list. It could suppress the black decay, but not let the green of all things overflow. The most pressing problem was basically solved, but how to stop the black decay became a new problem. According to the swamp monster's feedback, the black decay had been fighting back. Its strength was sometimes strong and sometimes weak, making it hard to figure out. Thea and Batman both felt that there was a mastermind behind the scenes. Analyzing the cause of the incident, finding the mastermind, and finally beating the mastermind to a pulp, this was how Batman did things in Gotham for more than 10 years. Although the method was a little rough, this process could solve more than 90% of the problems in the world. Thea could not come up with a better solution at the moment. The only problem was, where was the mastermind? Maybe Abby can help me open a passage to the black decay? The swamp monster probed. No need. The black decay's time flow is too different from the outside world. The green of all things are plants, so their time flow is the same as ours. The black decay is the dead, so I don't think they need time. Get rid of this idea immediately. Don't go in. Thea immediately rejected his idea. In the original timeline, the green of all things warrior and the animal hero valued by the red of all things warrior, these two hot-blooded youths wanted to fight back and plunged into the black decay. The ratio of time between the two worlds was 1 minute compared to 1 year. This was because they had taken away most of the power of the green of all things and the red of all things. When they came out, they discovered that the balance had been broken. The entire world had been tainted by the black of decay, turning into a country of decay. In the outside world, in just a year, all the Supermen, Wonder Women, and Flash had died. How could the word tragic describe it? Thea would never allow them to do such a brainless thing. Miss Abby, whom the swamp monster mentioned, was also a tragedy. She was the lover of the swamp monster, but at the same time, she was also the embodiment of the darkness of decay. The two of them acted out the natural world's Romeo and Juliet. In the end, both of them abandoned their human identities and became part of the balance of nature. Thea roughly knew who this person was. She didn't ask in detail, but Batman wouldn't let go of these details. Who was Abby? Where was she? What was her surname? What was her name? What did her ancestors do? He repeatedly asked a bunch of questions that confused the swamp monster. This person is very important. We should keep him within our sights and protect him. Batman's questioning was very skillful, and it was easy for him to extract a lot of information from the swamp monster's mouth. He immediately realized the content of the information. Thea also supported this suggestion. Not going to the dark side of decay was not in conflict with protecting Abby. These female leads were all weak, but they loved to seek death. Once Abby died, it would mean that the dark side of decay would have another powerful general, which would be even more troublesome. Zatanna, who had been idle all this time, took a photo of Abby and volunteered to pick her up. Thea began to think about the issue of all beings red. In the original spacetime, Animal Hero represented all beings red. In this spacetime, she didn't know whether the other party was more low-key or had not officially launched the Animal Hero banner. There was no relevant information on the internet at all. Doctor, can you try to contact All Beings Red? We need its power. We don't have the same source of power. How can I contact it? The swamp monster's voice was very low. He felt that Thea was joking. All Beings Red represents life. Let's not talk about humans for now. Animals in the wild will definitely eat plants. Maybe you can think of a way from this. Otherwise, we won't be able to find all beings red in the sea of people. Seeing that he still didn't understand, Thea could only explain it to him in detail. You see, large animals eat small animals, and small animals eat plants. Our ecological chain is like this, right? The swamp monster nodded. Thea continued. If a small animal eats a plant but doesn't have time to digest it before it is swallowed by another large animal, then in theory, you can use the undigested plant to sense the trajectory of life. Relying on this network between creatures, you may be able to find clues about all beings red. Thea had never looked for it herself. She could only give a general idea based on guesses. The key points still needed to be figured out by the swamp monster himself. However, he was a doctor after all, so his IQ shouldn't be low. The swamp monster was like he was holding back a big move. After a long time he said with some uncertainty, "There's a vague reaction, but I can sense two targets. Animal Hero and his daughter?" As soon as this idea popped up in Thea's mind, she knew that she guessed wrong. The swamp monster continued, "One is in California, and the other seems to be in San Francisco?" Thea was a little confused by the two targets. Since she couldn't figure it out, she decided not to think about it. No matter who it was, she would pull them back first. Batman expressed strong opposition to pulling so many irrelevant people into the Bat Cave. "What the hell? My place is almost a tourist attraction. Can't you see that Batgirl and the third-generation Robin don't dare to come in?" Thea thought it made sense. It was indeed not appropriate to come to the Bat Cave. She was not afraid of exposing her identity. There were plenty of venues. They agreed to meet in the metropolis later. 2 years ago, Quinn Group bought a huge building complex in the metropolis with all kinds of entertainment and training facilities. Originally, they planned to attract members and build a luxurious club. Unfortunately, the metropolis had never been peaceful, and it was not open for business after it was built. At first, she didn't pay much attention to it. Later, she accidentally passed by in a car and found that the building was a bit like the Justice League's Hall of Justice in terms of location and architectural style. Now, the place was still on hold. She left the address of the place. It was located in the west of the city center, not far from the headquarters of the Daily Planet. The environment was beautiful, transportation was convenient, and all kinds of supporting facilities were complete. Thea told them to meet there later. Then, she and Batman split up to look for people. The swamp monster could turn into thousands of plants, and he could give them vague directions. Poison Ivy felt that Zatanna had not come back for a long time. She told the two of them, put on the yellow light ring, and went to help. Thea went to San Francisco, and Batman flew the Batplane to California. The swamp monster's senses were very vague. It was a bit difficult to find someone in a modern city. Thea did not completely rely on him. The artificial intelligence kept searching for animal-related anomalies in San Francisco during this period. Unfortunately, nothing was found. The city was not rich, and the poor did not have the habit of entering their daily lives into the internet. Gideon expanded the search range several times, but the results were the same. If there was nothing, no matter how smart it was, it could not find it. Chapter 554. Which superhero lived here? Thea thought for a while, but she had no clue. There were too many superheroes, and this was a real world. Many characters wouldn't choose a city and wouldn't move even if they died. The swamp monster led them to a huge slum and announced the end of the quest. Batman was also at a stalemate. He had to find a man or woman without a name or surname, which was also a challenge for Batman, who was bursting with intelligence. Thea put on her invisibility spell and started to wander around the area. She didn't find any traces of superheroes from the local police station. She felt that her target was probably not Animal Hero. The owner of all beings red must be a mutant. She searched a few hospitals nearby, but other than lamenting that the poorer a place was, the more expensive the medical treatment was, there was nothing else. She took out Croydon's compass, but there were too few search conditions. She didn't know if the person was a man or a woman. The compass spun for a long time but didn't find anything. After that, Thea was confused. Who am I looking for? Where should I go? She wandered around the area with a head full of philosophical questions. Fortunately, Gideon's search ability was good. There was no information from the police station or the hospital. Finally, it found a clue on a forum. Rare tropical disease, unknown serum? It's this guy. Thea was a little excited. Gideon found a picture of a handsome little boy, but his face was green and looked a little out of place. Thea knew this guy. Wasn't this the backbone of the young Titans, Beast Boy? It was just that this guy was a few years younger than she remembered him to be. This guy was really easy to find, Gideon. I was the one who found him. He didn't go to a big hospital for treatment when he was sick. Instead, he trusted the free treatment from a medical institution and was injected with an even more messy serum. In the end, he turned green and escaped from the laboratory. With a face, it was much easier to find him. The huge satellite started to operate, and all kinds of facial recognition were screened through the cameras on the streets. Thea took out the compass to confirm the location. 3 minutes later, she was standing in front of a bungalow. She gently knocked on the door and found that no one answered. Activating her supervision, she saw the scene in the room and smiled playfully. She pushed the door open and walked in. The smell of life in the house was very strong. Bread was being baked in the oven not far away, and there was a plate of sausages on the table in the living room. However, the house was quiet. Is anyone here? Thea felt that this guy was quite good at pretending, so she didn't mind playing along with him. The room was so quiet that only her footsteps could be heard. Come out, Gar Logan. I mean you no harm. World peace needs you. Little frog, I'm talking about you. Am I right? Beast Boy had the ability to transform into animals at will. Thea made a few turns in the small house and found his hiding place. This guy turned into a frog and hid in the pile of clothes. Unfortunately, under Thea's supervision, it was useless. When Milady saw his transformation ability, she could not help but click her tongue in amazement. Perhaps it was because of his young age. The animal he transformed into also had a bit of a childish look. Compared to this, Thea felt that the frog this guy transformed into looked quite cute. The girl and the frog stared at each other for a few seconds. Thea smiled like a flower and reached out a jade-white finger to press the frog's head. Frogs in the natural world were not so clean. It was obvious that they were fake. This guy was still very inexperienced. Beast Boy seemed to want to fool her. To show that he was ordinary, he croaked 2 more times. Thea felt that it was getting more and more fun. She kept pressing the frog's head with her finger. He raised his head and Thea pressed it again. She was having fun. Beast Boy was a little angry at being teased. He didn't care about his disguise anymore. With a whoosh, he transformed into a gorilla. He seemed to be roaring fiercely at this woman who had come into his house for no reason. Wow! Thea's eyes lit up instantly. Unlike Jared, who was a big and black gorilla, Beast Boy's transformation suited her taste very well. The key was that he was relatively clean and his green hair was very soft. Thea quickly took out her phone and took a selfie with herself and the little gorilla. Beast Boy was slightly stunned by the flash of the phone. After he understood what was going on, he was even more furious. He jumped up and wanted to slap Thea's face. Thea didn't take him seriously at all. She pressed him back with one hand and took 2 more pictures. If Beast Boy had some fighting experience in a few years, he would find that the opponent's strength was far beyond his limit. In other words, he should run away. But at this time, he was not mature enough. He was still at the age of a teenager. He had to fight even if he couldn't win. Thinking that the gorilla couldn't do anything to Thea, he transformed into a kangaroo, a rhinoceros, a hippo, and a wolf. However, the result was that he was suppressed by Thea. He felt that his appearance was very fierce, but in Thea's eyes, he was a little kangaroo, a little rhinoceros, a little hippo, and a little wolf. A silly and cute temperament went straight to the sky. Thea herself liked small animals very much. She had a good relationship with the Sea King's little friend, Yavala, and the other party gave her a lot of small animals. She raised a lot of tigers and lions in the old house in Star City and the villa in the metropolis. Diana's comment about this was the nature of a rich lady in a big city. In short, she was idle. In the eyes of the Amazon, animals were enemies no matter how big or small they were. She was glad at this time. Fortunately, she came to San Francisco. Fortunately, she met the younger Beast Boy. When this guy got older, the animals he transformed into would also become bigger. At that time, there would be nothing cute about him. In order to keep this beautiful moment, she kept teasing the Beast Boy. When she encountered those particularly cute and human-like expressions, she would capture them and keep them for later appreciation. For example, at this time, the boy turned into a bear. Of course, for Thea, it was more like a little bear. The Beast Boy, who was about to overflow with anger, stretched out two stubby forearms and tried to scare Thea. So cute! Thea immediately ran behind him, pressed his two front paws, and put her chin on his head. She controlled the phone with the hand of magic and took several photos crazily. Looking at the phone in the air, the Beast Boy finally recovered most of his rationality. He realized that this woman was a bit out of the ordinary, and cold sweat came down his face. Thea was more and more satisfied with the human-like expression of fear on the little bear's face. She bound him with her mental power, squatted on his hand, and made a peace sign to take more than 10 photos. She took back the phone and looked at the effect. It was really quite good. Thea was going to show it to Diana next time. She always felt that it was her responsibility to cultivate the Valkyrie's love for small animals. Chapter 555. The pale-faced Beast Boy struggled with all his might, but Thea's restraint was not something that could be broken through by brute force. He tried several times but found that he could not break free at all. The real Beast Boy finally understood what was going on. He lay on the ground, trembling all over. Could it be that he broke it? Thea quickly deactivated the magic. Beast Boy's reaction was not slow. He realized that he had regained his freedom and turned into a cheetah. He rushed to the window. In his mind, as long as he broke through the glass and went outside, he would be safe. He was familiar with the surroundings and could get rid of this unknown woman. It was a good idea, but reality gave him a cruel blow. He crashed into the glass of his house with the force of a thunderbolt. The glass, which could be smashed with a coin in the past, was as hard as a rock today. Clang! With a muffled sound, Beast Boy sat on the ground in a daze. He looked at the window dizzily and his eyes were filled with despair. Thea laughed so hard that she fell down. She did not dare to hit the wall. This house that was sealed by her simple magic would not be able to withstand her fists now. Just as Beast Boy was doubting whether he could see the sun tomorrow, a phone call allowed him to escape the clutches of the female devil temporarily. Thea looked at the phone. It was Batman calling. She shouted at Beast Boy, "Deactivate your transformation and stay here. You can't escape from me." She then picked up the phone. Batman's voice came through as usual. "I've found Buddy Baker's family. How are things on your side?" Thea's supervision saw Beast Boy looking around the house for an exit. Unfortunately, he did not understand the mystery of magic. She calmly replied to Batman, "I've found them, but this is a child. I need to talk to his parents again." Garland Logan was only 9 years old. The bad guys could kidnap him directly, but the heroes still had to consider the consequences. Then be quick. Batman hung up the phone very simply. Hearing that she had ended the call, Beast Boy, who had yet to find an escape route, could only deactivate his transformation and slowly walk out. The green-haired, green-skinned, green-eyed Beast Boy, who was wearing a red tracksuit, saw Thea sitting on his sofa and kept looking at her. He was so scared that he stood far away in fear. "You probably didn't hear what I said before, so I'll say it again. There's a big problem with the operation of the world, big trouble, and we need your power." This time, Thea was a lot more serious. Although there was still a smile on her face, a 9-year-old child couldn't see it. Little Beast was young and occasionally a little silly, but he was very smart. He thought that if Thea, who was so powerful, was looking for him, then the trouble she was talking about must be very dangerous. She immediately shook her head and said, "I'm still young. I don't know how to do anything." She was very careful and revealed the face of a child who was about to be abducted. Thea looked at him carefully and didn't say anything. Animal Man was a legitimate chosen of all beings red. This guy was similar to Poison Ivy, who also took advantage of the loopholes to obtain some of the power of all beings red. No matter what, there was no harm in bringing him along. He didn't look like he came from a good family, but he didn't do anything evil despite having such a strong ability. It was obvious that he was a natural-born superhero. Thea's ability to bluff people was almost maxed out. She immediately started to analyze the seriousness of the current situation and pointed out the value of his ability. Looking at the whole human race, she raised his importance to an unparalleled level. Even if this incident is over, you still need to train your own ability, as well as basic social interaction and school. These are all things you need. Speaking of school, Beast Boy was a little depressed. My classmates in school are avoiding me, my skin. Thea felt that it was far more than what he said. Bad kids were everywhere in America. It would be a joke if she didn't bully a green-skinned one when she suddenly saw one. Like Superman, the Flash, and so on, they were all bullied when they were young. Furthermore, Beast Boy was so green-skinned, it was normal for him to be treated with disdain and beaten up. Those with a weak temperament would become villains when they grew up with abilities. Those with a strong temperament would become heroes when they grew up. This was a very important mental journey. She wasn't prepared to interfere with other people's growth process. Instead, she sat quietly on the sofa and waited for something. What are you waiting for? Where are you protecting world peace? In San Francisco? Beast Boy asked tentatively. I'm waiting for your parents. I'm not a bad person. There are a lot of things that I need to explain to them. Also, you have to come with me to the metropolis. All the resistance forces are gathered there. Beast Boy's mind instantly flashed with a bunch of righteous heroes fighting monsters. As a kind-hearted person, he felt that it was very emotional. However, he quickly realized something. My parents get off work very late. They won't be home so early. Don't worry. 3 minutes ago, I bought your father's transportation company and your mother's supermarket. They're on their way home, Thea said lightly. It was only a few million. It wasn't worth mentioning at all. Beast Boy's mouth formed an O shape. He stared blankly at the Demon Queen. He was still young and didn't know what all this meant. Thea closed her eyes and waited for 10 minutes. A middle-aged couple walked in. Mr. Logan had grown a big beer belly in his middle age. He looked a little worried. At the same time, he didn't have any sideburns on his face and 3 sharp blades wouldn't come out of his hands. Thea felt a lot more relieved. Unlike the 9-year-old Beast Boy, the couple knew Thea. At least, they had seen her on TV. Now that they heard her solemnly say that there was a world crisis and that she needed their son's help, the two of them felt dizzy as if they were in a dream. Thanks to CNN's fearless reporting, many citizens also knew that strange things were happening around the world. However, they felt that it was very far away from them and treated it as a topic of conversation. Now, a heavyweight like Thea was talking to them face to face. She even bought the companies that they worked for in order to save time. The leaders of the companies urged them to go home to discuss this matter. The two of them felt that the survival of the entire human race was on their shoulders. Beast Boy's sense of justice was inseparable from his parents. The couple quickly made up their minds and agreed to let Thea take Beast Boy away. I'll bring him back safely. Don't worry, the other adult is the main force. Jared Logan's power is just a precaution. Thea comforted the 2 middle-aged men. Her celebrity status was still very useful. Although the two of them were still worried, they still let Thea take their son away. Teleporting in front of ordinary people was an unusual thing that would increase the psychological pressure on the two. They would think that their son was going to do a particularly dangerous mission. Sia dragged Beast Boy until they were out of sight before activating the teleportation. Chapter 556. After a simple teleportation, Beast Boy Garland Logan had yet to break free from the melancholy of leaving his parents when he found himself in a strange place. Kid, welcome to the metropolis, Sia introduced proudly when she saw Beast Boy poking his head out to look around. Ha! The metropolis? They were thousands of miles away in the blink of an eye? Beast Boy did not believe it, but he was still traumatized by Thea's teasing, so he did not dare to refute. When they entered the Hall of Justice that Thea named herself, Poison Ivy and Zatanna had already returned with the swamp monster's girlfriend, Miss Abby. Batman's fighter jet was still on its way even though it had left earlier. Beast Boy also saw the swamp monster and Poison Ivy, and immediately found his balance. So, he was not the weirdest. Abby, who had a head of silver hair and was dressed fashionably, attracted Thea's attention. At this time, this fashionable woman was hugging the swamp monster, which was covered in vines and did not look like a human. The ghastly scene made her feel a little uncomfortable. She told Beast Boy not to run around and turned to ask Poison Ivy, "What's the delay? With your and Zatanna's strength, what kind of monster can trap you?" Poison Ivy said a little gloomily, "When I arrived, Zatanna was attacking a huge guy made of bones and rotten flesh. It called itself Storm God Seth. My plants did not respond to me at all. I had to rely on the power of the light ring to fight my way out." Storm God Seth? Thea thought about it but could not remember. There were too many gods on Earth in the past, like the Hawaiian shark god that she had killed. It was very obscure and not many people knew about it. Those who did not study the local history would not have heard of it. The Seth that Poison Ivy mentioned also had the same problem. It was most likely a god worshipped by a small tribe. It was taken away by the twilight of the gods and was now pulled up by the Black of Decay to be a fighter. However, this kind of thing was a weak god when he was alive and was even weaker after death. As one of the new gods, Thea did not take it to heart. He then asked Zatanna about it. As a descendant of Da Vinci and an outstanding mage with a legacy, she should not be afraid of any evil gods. However, the Black of Decay's special characteristic allowed all living things to possess the characteristic of being immortal. Zatanna had taken Seth apart 3 times, and he had been revived with full health. If not for Poison Ivy materializing the lamp ring and giving her a fierce beating, she would not have been able to kill her way out so easily. The few of them chatted for a while, and they all noticed Beast Boy. This child had been quiet for 3 minutes, and then he became active. He looked around and touched many technological devices that he had never seen before. He was curious about everything. When he was playing a game on the computer, he was shocked when he saw the person who walked in. His voice was filled with excitement. "Batman." This made Thea very unhappy. "You know Batman but not me? Fine, just you wait." However, she did not have time to play with the kid. Instead, she looked at the family of 3 behind Batman. Animal Man, his wife, and daughter were slightly different from Green of Creation. Red of Creation's life force was as described, with a bit of fierceness. Animal Man and his daughter's life force was very strong in Thea's eyes. Thea and Batman looked at each other and nodded. Everyone started the meeting. As a superhero who had protected Gotham for more than 10 years, Batman's reputation was unparalleled. This could be seen from the fact that Beast Boy knew Batman but not Thea. The task of explaining the situation was automatically handed over to him. Thea was sitting on the side. She was sorting out the photos she had just taken. She was going to choose some with beautiful angles and clear views to send to Diana. It would be even better if she could use this to cultivate her love for small animals. The two had chatted on the phone for a long time. Diana had asked if she needed her to come back and help. Thea thought about it and did not agree. In the face of this corrosive energy, physical attacks were not very useful. Diana should focus on finding her own source. Beast Boy, who had been watching her with his sharp eyes, naturally saw her actions. However, because Batman was still talking in the middle, Beast Boy resisted the idea of biting Thea. Beast Boy, who tended to be hyperactive, was quickly attracted to Animal Man Buddy Baker, who was not far away. The irresponsible Thea did not tell him about Red of Creation. He only felt that this stern-looking uncle looked very friendly. As for the uncle's daughter, Maxine Baker, an 8-year-old girl made him feel even closer. Although he was still young, the thought of protecting this girl who was 1 year younger than him appeared in Beast Boy's mind for the first time. "I can't let anyone or anything hurt her," the 9-year-old Beast Boy, Gar Logan, said to himself. Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, a muffled bang attracted his attention. He saw the stern-looking Uncle Buddy Baker slamming the table angrily. "The reagents you sprayed all over the world are also suppressed in the Red of Creation. They are very dissatisfied. The green of all things is the main force against the Black of Decay. All the plants in the world are resisting. What's there to be dissatisfied about just sitting back and enjoying the fruits of others' labor?" The swamp monster didn't speak quickly, but his choice of words was definitely not polite. "Then why are you looking for me? I can protect my wife and daughter." The swamp monster's blunt words made this Animal Man, who had been modified by Red of Creation, even more dissatisfied. Batman coughed twice and signaled Thea to stop playing with her phone. It was her turn to speak. After Thea became a god, her senses had reached a new level. She would know when someone called her name. She could sense when someone looked at her. She immediately put away her phone and put on a serious face. "Oh, Mr. Baker, I think you've misunderstood. We're not looking for you. You should be looking for us. Maintaining the balance of all things is your business. Because you don't communicate or cooperate with each other, it triggered the current crisis on Earth. If it weren't for the fact that we have no other choice, superheroes wouldn't want to interfere with these things. We're heroes who ensure the normal and orderly development of human civilization. We're not plants or animals. It felt very good to criticize others from the moral high ground. No matter how dissatisfied Animal Man was, he could not think of anything to say. He could only change the topic and point his gun at Miss Abby, who was sitting next to the swamp monster. If I'm not mistaken, this woman is the incarnation of the Black of Decay, right? What's the purpose of you calling her here? She's our enemy. Animal Man pointed at Abby and said, "Shut up. Abby is not a bad person. She has never hurt anyone." Abby lowered her head and did not speak. The swamp monster next to her was angry and loudly retorted Animal Man. The two were at loggerheads, and the smell of gunpowder was growing visibly. Chapter 557. The green color on the swamp monster's body became more intense, and the vines on its arms began to move agilely, like poisonous snakes waiting for the opportunity to bite the enemy. Animal Man was not to be outdone. His body had gathered the strength of all the animals in the world, such as the strength of a Tyrannosaurus rex, the smell of a moth, the agility of a cheetah, the self-healing ability of a worm, and many other abilities. He looked at the swamp monster fearlessly. Seeing that her boyfriend was going to stand up for her, Abby, who had an equally strong personality, was still unable to use the power of the Black Decay. However, this did not stop her from taking out a pistol from behind her and pointing it at Animal Man. How vexing. That was the only thought Sia had at that moment. Batman didn't like superhumans. Sometimes it had to be said that his point of view was very correct. The saying that a person's temperament was like a raging fire that could be ignited at the slightest provocation was used to describe this group of people who had suddenly obtained beyonder powers. The people in front of her were heroes of justice or people with high moral standards. If they were all like this, it was understandable that ordinary people with average temperament would become villains after little stimulation. Two fake gods. Thea knew their level at a glance. They were similar to Grandma's Nemesis team. They did not have a divine position, but they had some power of the origin. The fake gods on Apocalypse Star had been brainwashed by Grandma, so there was almost no possibility of them losing control. However, there were no such top talents on Earth. The sudden increase in power made the two of them a little unbalanced. The two in front of her had not reached their peak. They could only be said to have the fake god model, but their level was not full. Fake gods were a joke in Thea's eyes. They were flashy but not practical. She did not care about the two who had not reached their full level. "Sit down." Her voice was soft and slow. No one in the room heard it. The two who had accidentally fired their guns felt a huge pressure. It was not a physical pressure, but a heavy pressure that emerged from the depths of their souls. They had a very mysterious feeling that if they did not sit down, their souls would be crushed. The two of them sat down slowly, dumbfounded. Abby, who was holding a pistol, saw that the situation had calmed down. She did not know what had happened, but she sat back down obediently. Batman spoke again. "The Black Decay is only temporarily contained. It is fighting back every minute and every second of our conversation. I would like to ask Miss Abby, is there a mastermind behind everything?" Everyone's eyes focused on the silver-haired woman's face. Even though Miss Abby was famous for being a man, she was still a little embarrassed at this moment. She stammered and could not say anything. He didn't need to learn facial expressions to know that she didn't have any information at all. Batman could only look at Thea. What should he do now? Shall we gather all the relevant people together and hold a democratic meeting? Thea thought for a moment. Can Miss Abby still connect to the Black of Decay? The silver-haired woman's shoulders trembled in fear, as if she had thought of something bad. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "All these years, I've been in the green of all creation environment to suppress the call of the Black of Decay. As long as I don't die, I should be able to connect." "Why? Do you want to go in and ask? Is it the same as the green of all creation before?" Batman asked tentatively. I'm not going. The flow of time between the two worlds is different. I haven't reached the point where I can ignore time." Thea firmly rejected this proposal. After fusing with the source, her life had reached an infinite number, but it didn't mean that she could ignore time. New gods who fused with the source could cross the two ends of the timeline. The source was her, and she was the source. The source was at the beginning of time, and she was at the end of time. This was the main reason why their lives were infinite. Now, even if there was a flashpoint incident, she would not be afraid as she was standing at the source. She was eternal. All the people who were directly related to her would not be easily rewritten. Even if they were rewritten, the timeline would quickly correct them automatically. Even if there was a situation where Moira was erased, the timeline would automatically jump out a sister with the same bloodline as Moira. Thea would fall in love with Malcolm. Regardless of time and place, the one who would be born would be Thea. This unreasonable and unscientific ability was the passive attribute given to her by the source. She was trade itself and wealth itself. Unless these two were erased, she would continue to exist. However, even with such an awesome ability, the flow of time would still work on her. The flow of time between the two worlds would still be in effect. Why would she go to the Black of Decay for a vacation? She didn't want to comprehend the deity of decay. It didn't match her inherent style at all. I'm definitely not going. I suggest that you guys don't go either. But if Miss Abby wants to avoid the connection of the Black of Decay forever, I have a way. Thea suddenly thought of an idea. What way? Whether it was the swamp monster or Abby, the two of them looked at her attentively. Divide a part of your soul and cut off the part related to the Black of Decay. Make a new person to inherit the Black of Decay in your place, but the price is that you'll be just an ordinary person from then on. In fact, making a clone was the easiest thing to do. It was just that Batman was right beside her, so it was really inconvenient to do it. Taking a step back, it was not impossible to solve it with magic, but it was more troublesome. There was such a thing. Abby and the swamp monster were skeptical. For them, being an ordinary person was a blessing. Being a monster was not their intention at all. Great, what do you need me to do? Whether it was Sia's identity as a superhero or the title of a modern biomedical giant, she was very convincing. It had always been her dream to be able to get rid of the implications of her bloodline and become an ordinary person. Abby said happily. First of all, your blood is an important sign of the Black of Decay. I need to extract a lot of your blood. As for the body, I can use magic to make one. The body is not important. Your soul and blood are the foundation. When this substitute enters the Black of Decay, it can perform duties on your behalf. At that time, you can also use the connection between souls to ask what happened in the Black of Decay. Thea remembered that the mastermind behind the big incident in the Country of Decay was Abby's uncle. He was similar to Animal Boy and Poison Ivy. He also used a loophole to obtain part of the power of the Black of Decay. In the end, he was too powerful and affected the balance of the whole world. But now, it was not clear whether this person was behind the incident several years ago. According to the official records, this person had been dead for many years. Thea wanted to confirm the mastermind behind the incident first, then follow the clues to find the criminal. In order to win their trust, Thea created something out of thin air. She said it was magic, but in fact, she mixed it with divine power. Zatanna, who originally thought that she was exaggerating, was stunned. As she chanted the spell, it did not take long for her to create a guy that looked a lot like the little black man in Conan. Chapter 558. What the hell is this thing? Miss Abby stared at the pitch-black thing. Is this my avatar? Are you kidding me? This thing looks like it has been splashed with ink. It's so black that you can't see its face if you close your eyes and mouth. This thing looks weird. Beast Boy glanced at the indescribable part of the black guy. It doesn't even have any indescribable parts. How can this thing be used as a human? It's just a substitute. It has no brain. Don't look at me. This guy doesn't have an organ called a brain. There's no heart, no spleen, no kidney, no blood circulation system, and no hematopoietic function. In fact, Miss Abby, your blood is just a pass to me. The Kingdom of Decay doesn't need blood. The key is your soul. Thea looked at them surrounding her for 3 minutes. Even Batman and Zatanna looked at her curiously for a long time. She hurriedly explained to them. It's not that I'm not good at learning, it's just that I don't need those things. For us, we need a human face as a recognition standard. But for the Kingdom of Decay, they look at blood and a deeper level of the soul. Am I right? Green of all things and red of all things? Thea turned to ask Swamp Monster and Animal Man. Both of them felt that what she said was specious. They were all modern people and only knew a little about such a mysterious thing. They both pretended to know and nodded. The second step, draw blood. Miss Abby, lie down in it. Thea took out a very famous medical cabin. Now this thing was spread all over the world. 70% of the world's medical workers were forced to change their profession because of it. The good thing was that everyone was used to it. Miss Abby didn't hesitate too much and lay down in it. In less than 10 minutes, 10% of her blood was drawn. The medical cabin didn't just draw blood. At the same time, she was injected with an injection to mobilize her hematopoietic function. Even if she lost 10% of her blood, Miss Abby still looked normal when she came out of the medical cabin. Dividing the soul was not a small matter and definitely couldn't be performed in public. This was Thea's place. She pulled Miss Abby to a small room at the side. For bad people, she could just directly draw their souls. There were many spells in Morgan Le Fay's magic book that could do this, but Thea's current identity of justice made it impossible for her to do things so simply and violently. Fortunately, this was not a problem for her. She directly used the wealth god power's bewitching ability to enter the deepest part of her soul. How unbearable! In the spiritual world, Thea saw Miss Abby's soul. Her mortal-level spiritual power had been corroded and riddled with holes. Countless monsters that could only be seen in nightmares were running rampant in her spiritual world. They were old, rotten, and the entire spiritual world was filled with destruction. Even though she was already a god, Thea was still choked by the rotten smell in Miss Abby's soul. It was not because she had done many bad things, but because of her nature. This kind of essence could make a spiritual body without the five senses feel rotten, which meant that the other party had infiltrated very deeply. After adjusting the synchronization of their souls, Thea began to slowly exert her strength, using her own strength to drive Miss Abby's soul out of her body. A stench that was 10,000 times worse than stinky tofu and rotten eggs began to fill the room. Thea almost fainted from the smell. She hurriedly set up a barrier on the surface of Abby's soul. If this stench spread out, at least a third of the citizens of the metropolis would die. After everything was set up, she had time to observe the other party's soul. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was shocking. A normal person's soul was colorless and transparent, but some mages' souls showed the color of magic when they were alive. That was because magic had penetrated part of their soul essence. In front of her, Miss Abby's soul was turbid, like mud, or like some kind of expired product after being exposed to the sun. The only good news was that her head was still clear, so the cutting plan would not be abandoned halfway. If she directly used the holy sword, Thea was afraid that she would purify the other party. The father's dagger was also not a good idea. Miss Abby's current posture was more evil than a kind grandmother. The father's fire of justice would burn her to death in seconds. Thea could only use the slowest way to deal with it. Divine power could be used anywhere, so naturally, it could also be used for cutting. She could just cut off whatever she did not like. Even if she was done, this person could not be kept, because her soul would be cut into pieces. Even if the father came, he would not be able to put it back, and it was better to let it go. Letting it go was the best way. It was absolutely correct to say that mages were a group of people who were good at courting death. Thea had such a soul simulation spell in her hands, which was inspired by the mages of modern times from the tower spirit of the Mage Tower. They would place a simulated soul in their house to do some auxiliary work for their apprentices. This spell had nothing to do with fighting, but it was very suitable to be used here. Thea created a huge soul outside Miss Abby's body so that it could be used to carry the decayed souls. After the two sides were connected, it could be seen that the decayed part was trying to infect the new soul. Thea no longer hesitated and began to use her divine power to force the decayed souls to move away. Unable to connect to the decaying black, the impurities in Miss Abby's soul were like rootless water. Naturally, they could not compare to Thea, who was full of divine power. They began to unconsciously move towards the new soul. Thea swept the soul 3 times, and finally forced all the impurities back into the new soul. The new soul, which was originally like a water ball, began to develop into an irregular shape due to the excessive filth. After receiving nourishment from the new soul, the impurities began to clamor again. Countless voices in the soul were shouting, as long as they were left alone, they would soon be able to attack the original body. Gathering 10% of her divine power, Thea made a light stroke at the connection between the two sides, and then pushed Miss Abby's soul back into the body. She began to focus on fixing this mass of impurities. I'm so dizzy. This is what's in my body. In less than 3 minutes, Miss Abby woke up. The heavy burden that she had been carrying for many years was finally released. Although her head was still a little dizzy, her spirit was very good. She looked around in a daze, and only then did she see the dirty mass that Thea was fiddling with. It was terrifying and had a sense of disgust towards the living. Based on her intuition, she knew that it was her, or rather, it used to be a part of her. I can't believe that I have such an evil nature. Miss Abby covered her mouth in shock. As if she was afraid that the mass of impurities would find her again, she moved back a few steps with her hands and feet. Thea did not want to popularize the idea that white was not justice, and black was not evil. For someone like her who only wanted to be a normal person, a black and white worldview was most suitable for them. There was nothing wrong with something simpler. Chapter 559. Miss Abby, please bring me the dummy I made before, and the blood in the medical pod. The extraction code is H6E5. Thea could actually summon it with a spell, but she thought that if she gave the young lady something to do, she might stop overthinking things. Miss Abby saw that the separated monster was becoming more and more ferocious. She did not dare to stay any longer and hurriedly ran out. When she saw the little black man still standing in the same place, she thought too much. Is my true nature a black man? A black body with a black soul? When she thought of the unknown object Thea was fiddling with, she was even more certain of this. Thinking that the thing had been in her body for many years, she had the urge to take a bath immediately. However, she also knew that now was not the time to answer the question of the swamp monster and the others. She took out a 500 milliliter storage tank from the medical pod and ran back with the little black man on her back. She only had one thought in her mind, and that was to end everything quickly and let her be an ordinary person. You're quite fast. Thea saw that her face was pale and thought that her soul was seriously damaged. She comforted her with a few words and began the last step of the process. She forced the decaying soul that was about to turn into a monster into the little black man's body. The little black man's originally well-proportioned body expanded visibly until it was 3 meters tall and more than 2 meters wide. Its originally sexless body became even more ferocious and ugly. The decaying soul caused the little black man to crawl instead of walking upright. An arm grew out from each side of his ribs. The head that was originally so black that no one could see a person split open from the middle. A head full of sharp teeth roared at the two of them, showing off its might. Thea did not spoil it and directly poured Miss Abby's blood into its big mouth. Anyway, there was no blood circulation system, so it did not matter where it went. After that, it was time for the main event. Thea began to manually adjust the flow of time around the monster. It would take time to find the entrance to the darkness of decay. This monster was about to go berserk at any moment, so it was necessary to calm it down first. After setting up a time barrier with a ratio of 101, the monster was knocked out. When it woke up, it would have entered the darkness of decay. How is it, Miss Abby? Can you still communicate with this guy? Thea pointed at the monster and asked. Miss Abby sensed it carefully. The connection is very slight, almost indistinct. Thea nodded. This was in line with her expected goal. Miss Abby was destined to be the spokesperson of the dark decay. Now that she had cut her, even if the effect of the doppelganger was good, the connection between them would not be completely cut off. I know it's a bit difficult, but you have to communicate with it again. Only by controlling it can we understand what happened in the black decay. It is temporarily trapped by my magic. It is not difficult for me to destroy it, but the difficult part is communicating with it. You are originally one with it, and with that trace of feeling, you are the only one who can control it. As long as it inherits your original position in the darkness of decay, and does not wantonly destroy it, all of this will truly end. Let it calm down and accept your control. This is fate. You cannot avoid it. Thea broke down the logic and explained it to Miss Abby. Miss Abby's manly personality finally gained the upper hand. She would rather die than die. After all, she would not be the one to suffer in the end. All she had to do was talk to this monster. Let's do it. Following the method Thea taught her, with the help of the inherent connection, she began to calm the monster that had fallen into chaos due to her soul being sliced. This was originally a part of her, and they were of the same origin. The monster whose body was unconscious but whose soul was still roaring angrily discovered Miss Abby. It was still the same familiar voice and smell. The split soul felt the existence of the main body, and like an abandoned child, It kept crying in the soul world. The manic thoughts were gradually calmed down, and the evil-looking soul slowly calmed down. Thea did not retract her magic. A time barrier with a ratio of 100 to 1 was just right. Such a slow flow of time could reduce some of its hostility. When it finally adapted and accepted it, and finally became accustomed to it, this process would cause a change in its personality. There were very few people with a slow personality who could be bad. At least, that was what Thea thought. Miss Abby's evil side should not be seen by others. Thea softly told her to continue calming the monster while she walked out. Ha! As soon as she walked out, she realized that there was a lot of commotion outside. Uncle, don't hit me. I don't mean any harm. Listen to me. The one who turned into a small cheetah and ran for his life was Beast Boy. Behind him, the one who was so angry that he could not speak was animal hero Buddy Baker. Although he did not have the ability to transform, he also had the speed of a cheetah. The two of them were basically at the same speed, one in front and one behind. Thea was puzzled. She did not know what the two of them were doing. Fortunately, this was her territory. She pulled up the surveillance camera and looked at it. When she saw it, she almost burst out laughing. It turned out that after she took Miss Abby away, a few adults gathered in 2s and 3s to chat. The only two children present, the 9-year-old Beast Boy and Animal Hero's daughter, the 8-year-old Maxine Baker, were together. There was a slight difference between them and the swamp monsters. In fact, Beings Red was really interested in Maxine Baker. This 8-year-old girl was the real representative they had chosen. Animal Hero was just a side character. As the official worker of Beings Red, the little girl's attraction to Beast Boy was not ordinary. Beast Boy, who was originally very funny, used all his tricks to make the little girl happy. Thea's previous training seemed to have opened a door for him, and he mastered the essence of picking up girls without a teacher. This guy turned into all kinds of small animals to tease Maxine. The transformation of a tiger cub and a lion cub, the petite figure, the comical movements, and the human-like expression made the little girl, who was very friendly with animals, laugh. When Animal Hero heard the laughter and turned to look at his daughter, he saw Beast Boy turn into a small elephant and perform a squirting performance. How dare you flirt with my daughter in front of me? Animal Hero was furious. What followed was the chase that Thea saw when she came in. Animal Hero's pursuit of Beast Boy seemed fierce, but in fact, it was not dangerous at all. Buddy Baker was a superhero and an adult. How could he make things difficult for a child? At most, it was just a matter of beating him up. No one took it seriously. When Batman saw Thea walk to his side, he said slowly, "This place is not bad. It can be used as a meeting place to discuss problems in the future." "Ha, you're afraid that everyone will go to the Batcave, so you're quickly looking for a replacement, right?" Thea understood his thoughts and nodded in tacit agreement. To be honest, every time they discussed something about world peace and human development, it was really inharmonious to run to his cold cave to discuss it. It was also a good thing that superheroes had an open and above-board meeting place. Chapter 560. The matter of the venue was not important at all. The two of them settled it while chatting. This made a certain someone, who always had a meeting in the Batcave, secretly sigh in relief. "Can we counterattack now?" Animal Man and Beast Boy were still chasing each other, while Thea and Batman were having a serious discussion, forming a very strange scene. Of course, let's go to the first few places where the abnormality was first discovered. If my guess is correct, the black decay should be the tentacles that extend from those places. Eliminate the monsters, find the mastermind behind the scenes, and then suppress the spread of the green of all things. At the same time, rely on Miss Abby to find the passage on the other side and put her soul clone in. Thea counted with her fingers as she explained a few steps to Batman. These steps had to be carried out at the same time, and it was really inconvenient to have few people. In addition, coordinating the cooperation was also a very brain-intensive task, so these chores were naturally packed up and handed over to Batman. As a senior among the superheroes, he was indeed very suitable for this task. Just by standing there majestically, Animal Man and Beast Boy automatically stopped chasing each other. Batman said a few words about the next battle arrangement. Superman, who acted as a human flesh-spraying machine, also flew back. He had sprayed 7 or 8 buckets of green reagent, and his cloak and tights were stained with a lot of green. However, this hero, whose duty was to protect humanity, did not have time to care about the issue of clothing. Instead, He asked for the latest information. Hearing that the counterattack was about to begin, Superman also volunteered to participate in the battle. Batman, having Superman's combat power is enough. You should stay at the back. Thea was afraid that he would be infected by the Black Decay, and the loss of humanity would be too great. I've done my research. The Black Decay is spread by mosquitoes and flies, not by air. I'm already prepared. You guys wait. Batman arrogantly left the two in front of him and went to the back to change his clothes. He came out in less than 3 minutes. He was still wearing the black bat suit, but the material of the clothes looked a little familiar to Thea. Now, Batman's entire face was covered, and not a trace of his skin was exposed. His voice was even more dull. Familiar, right? 2 years ago when you fought with Diana and that guy who jumped out of the sea, you guys defeated a guy called Black Manta. His combat suit was very unique, so I made a copy of it long ago. This suit is airtight, and even nano-sized needles can't pierce it. It's enough to deal with those mosquitoes. Thea could only give him credit. He had nothing better to do, so he decided to copy someone else's battlesuit just because it was unique. This was very Batman. However, his judgment was right. Black Manta's battlesuit couldn't even get into his body, so dealing with some slightly more powerful mosquitoes was no problem. Thea had a divine body, so the Black Decay's rules couldn't affect her. Superman's body was even worse. If mosquitoes could break through his defense, he should just go back to Kansas and farm. Now that Batman's safety was guaranteed, the three of them were officially a team. The Swamp Monster and Animal Man also had their own immune systems, so they could follow. However, they didn't know that they had changed from the original protagonist to a supporting role. The rest of the group wasn't suitable to follow. Poison Ivy didn't have the complete green of all things ability, so the Black Decay could still work on her body. Zatanna's magic was extraordinary, but unfortunately, her body was still that of an ordinary person, so she didn't have a strong defense. As for Animal Man and the others, they didn't mention it at all. No matter how bad they were, they wouldn't let a 9-year-old child take the lead. Boy, I'm telling you, protect my daughter. If she loses a single strand of hair, I'll kill you. Animal Man changed into his battlesuit and threatened Animal Man. Thea looked at Animal Man's frightened face and wanted to laugh. She resisted the urge to interrupt their affectionate farewell and introduced them to the others who were going with them. Everyone, let's go to Wyoming first. The mosquitoes and flies there are mutating too quickly, and the government can't suppress them anymore. They nodded immediately, and Thea directly teleported the 4 of them to Wyoming. The actual situation here was far worse than imagined. The government, military, and civil groups were all trying to kill the mosquitoes and flies everywhere. Unfortunately, the mutated mosquitoes and flies seemed to be endless. Everyone tried everything to stop them, but it didn't work. Instead, more people became zombies because of the spread of mosquitoes and flies. The place where the plant growth reagent was sprayed was also a key area. With a large number of plants, they barely managed to maintain a stalemate with the mosquitoes and flies. Looking at the overwhelming number of mosquitoes and flies, Thea felt a little disgusted. After thinking about it, she really didn't have any good spells to deal with these things. No matter if it was an ancient sorcerer or a modern sorcerer, no one would be so bored as to develop a spell to kill mosquitoes and flies. I'll leave it to you guys. Thea felt that she was responsible for coming up with ideas and ideas. She was just a part-time driver. Such a dirty job should be left to the strong guys. They didn't waste any time and began to kill the mosquitoes. Batman directly threw out a device similar to a mosquito lamp, which emitted a blue fluorescent light to attract the mosquitoes and flies. Superman relied on the combination of his supervision and superhearing to sweep a large area with heat rays. The above 2 were only considered amateurs. The Swamp Monster and Animal Man, who had strong backing, were much more professional. The Swamp Monster directly took over the control of all the plants in the area. Plants had their own way of hunting mosquitoes and flies, but they didn't cooperate before. With the arrival of the Swamp Monster, the plants began to fight back under his command. Many pitcher plants rose from the ground. These plants secreted a kind of juice that was very delicious to the mosquitoes and flies. The next step was to close the door and beat the dogs until they were slowly digested. The first to be hunted was the Venus flytrap. This kind of carnivorous plant in nature had exceptionally enchanting and beautiful leaves. Under the urging of the green of all things, the fresh and delicious leaves attracted mosquitoes and flies to rush up one after another. However, the result was that they were all digested into a pool of pus without exception. The remaining plants that secreted venom, produced paralyzing gas, and produced hallucinogenic gas could be seen everywhere. Animal Man was a little weaker. The green of all things here was too strong. He couldn't use his strength. Plus, he was only a temporary worker in the red of all things, so the damage he caused was far less than the swamp monster. However, he didn't just stand aside in a daze. Instead, he used his ability to communicate with animals to call over many frogs, geckos, and dragonflies to help kill the mosquitoes and flies. With the efforts of the four heroes and Thea occasionally throwing out fireballs, the area controlled by the mosquitoes and flies gradually began to shrink towards the central area. The tragic situation on the ground was slowly revealed as the mosquitoes and flies retreated. Humans and animals with stiff limbs and bodies full of diseased tissues slowly walked out of the towns covered in blood, from the empty and dead wilderness, and from the private cars that had collapsed by the roadside. Chapter 561. Can these people still be saved? Superman couldn't help but ask Thea. They've been dead for a long time. Thea took a look. These people had already died the moment they were bitten by mosquitoes and flies. What they were fighting against was not some kind of germ, but the black decay. This was something that mutated from the source. Even if it was just a tiny bit, it was not something that ordinary people could withstand. The superheroes had a principle of not killing. Although these people were dead, they still couldn't bear to do it. Thea didn't care, but she felt that the scene was a little heavy and was afraid of dirtying her hands. 2 phone calls connected to the White House and the Pentagon. Thea, who was not afraid of exposing her identity, obtained the highest command of the entire Wyoming Army. With the help of military satellites and her supervision, Thea began to arrange for the troops to clean up the zombies. All the frontline troops were equipped with thermal imaging. Many mosquitoes and flies had the habit of hiding in the zombies' bodies. During the gap in the battle, Batman developed a device that emitted infrasonic waves to kill mosquitoes in a large area. With the help of local production equipment, he made 5 of them in one go and equipped the troops to kill mosquitoes. The heroes cleared the mosquitoes and flies in the air and on the ground. Under the powerful command of the army, they slowly and vigorously recovered the city. The entire Wyoming was severely damaged. A conservative estimate estimated that at least 100,000 of the 500,000 residents had died. The economic losses were immeasurable. The famous scenic spot, Yellowstone National Park, was even more devastated. Several canyons and waterfalls were occupied by various rotten animals. The hot springs, geysers, hot pools, and blowhole were all filled with blood and all kinds of unknown black mud. Thea felt that it was a pity when she saw this scene. Yellowstone's scenery was not bad. It was one of the few American scenic spots that Diana liked. The young lady felt a little regretful that there was one less dating place. The heroes had a simple discussion, and all felt that they should completely eliminate mosquitoes and flies. One had to know that even a mosquito that escaped could cause heavy damage to human society. Superman memorized the sounds of mosquitoes and flies and began to use his superhearing to find the ones that had escaped the net. Thea was also inspired by Batman's infrasonic wave attack. She directly threw out 2 low-pitched versions of the Banshee's howl, acting out what it meant to use a cannon to kill mosquitoes. She could be considered the first person to use such a high-level spell to deal with mosquitoes. The 5 of them continued to sweep the perimeter, while the ground troops steadily pushed forward. Finally, after confirming that they had not missed anything, they headed towards the source of the incident, a county town called Canberra. This small city of more than 10,000 square kilometers, with a population of more than 30,000 people, and named after the first governor of Wyoming, had become a heavily deserted ruin. Thea called for the ground troops to stop. They were no longer able to participate in the matters below. A force of death hovered above the city, accompanied by a faint fluctuation of divine power. From the initial discovery of the mosquitoes and flies to the current counterattack, it was not difficult to turn a city into an empty one in less than half a day. The difficult part was the destruction of the landscape. Yellow sand billowed in front of them, waves of heat wreaked havoc, and the wind carried with it a dry and dead air. People would believe it if they said this was the Middle East. Who would have thought that half a day ago, this place was the intersection of the Rocky Mountains and the Great Plains of Wyoming? After all, Wyoming was the Native American word for valley. There was a desert between the mountains and the valleys? As long as the ancient Native Americans were not blind, they would not have come up with such a name. Then, Only the gods had the means to turn the sea into a mulberry field and a city into a desert in half a day. If she was not mistaken, this was the territory of the storm god Seth that the poison vine lady Zatanna had mentioned. Sia could only be said to be vigilant against such an unknown god. She was not afraid of him. She even dared to roll up her sleeves and slash at Hades. This storm god, who had been dead for God knows how many years and was now forcibly pulled up by the black rot, was not a problem. Thea originally wanted to let Batman command from the rear. Unfortunately, this omnipotent man had remotely controlled his Batfighter to Wyoming. The swamp monsters could weave vines into wings, and the animal heroes could imitate birds. The 5 of them roughly had the ability to fly, so they continued to fly as a group. After flying for less than 10 minutes, the city of the dead in the center of the desert was finally revealed to them. Black and brown dominated their field of vision. The ground was covered with thick blood. The blood had completely lost its vitality. The bright red blood that symbolized life had turned dark black. White bone buildings could be seen everywhere. The bones of humans and beasts were piled up messily, forming a unique architectural style. There were also zombies walking around in the city. Many of the beasts in the mountains were also infected. Under the control of the black rot, both humans and beasts had abandoned their original habits. They only knew how to patrol the place without thought or purpose until their bodies were completely rotten. There were a few birds patrolling the sky. Those who did not have supervision could only see that they were not birds when they got closer. They were human heads with spines attached to the rotting corpses of the birds. A few of the rotting birds saw Thea and the others and let out hoarse cries as they rushed over in a frenzy. These birds did not fly fast, but their disgusting effect was far stronger than their lethality. They were all shot down by the Batfighter with a few bullets. They were not here to eat. Since they had been discovered, there was nothing else to say. Let's fight. Thea did not hold back anymore. She directly opened the battle with a meteorite spell, a mixture of earth and fire elements. Ordinary mages could only summon one to kill. Thea summoned 20 of them in one go and threw them densely into the Black Rot City. The meteorites with great kinetic energy and flames smashed into the places where the zombies were the most concentrated. Many of the rotting humans and beasts were vaporized by the high temperature. However, in the next second, more rotting humans and beasts rushed out of the city. In this territory of the Black Rot, the swamp monster and animal man's strength dropped again and again. Both of them could not maintain their transformation. Fortunately, Batman had already predicted this and made some preparations in advance. Batman's old rival Bane's poison canister was directly modified and given to the swamp monster. At this time, the swamp monster was fighting with a big canister on its back. It looked strange. The canister was filled with the plant reagent he invented. With a little purification, it could obtain the green of all things. If the tube was not removed, the swamp monster could still fight. On the other hand, Animal Man did not have such a cheat. However, he did not have as strict requirements for the environment as the swamp monster. He could still use 40 to 50% of his strength. Batman's fighter was not very effective in the face of the rotting humans and beasts who were not afraid of death. He chose to attack from the outside. The main offensive force was handed over to Thea and Superman. The heat rays that could not be turned were a little limited. Superman began to use his freezing breath to clear a large area. Chapter 562. Sia, on the other hand, cooperated with Superman's frost breath. She switched from meteorite spell to frost spell, frost rain spell, hailstorm spell, super large range ice cloud spell, ice storm spell, ice tornado spell, and so on. The two of them were very efficient. With a total area of more than 10,000 square kilometers, they directly applied a trace of holiness to the small city that was mainly brown and black. The frost made the temperature of the rotten and dead city drop by dozens of degrees in an instant. The various kinds of walking corpses that were already inconvenient to move, now without the support of the black decay in their bodies, it was even more inconvenient to walk. The guy hiding under the city finally couldn't hold back and wanted to stop the destruction. Seth, the god of storms, and now the self-proclaimed king of decay, was made up of rotten flesh and bones. There was no living tissue in his throat, and he could only use the broken organs of many rotting humans to communicate his voice. Who are you people? In front of the supreme king of decay, what you should do is offer up your bodies, and I will bestow you with endless power. You also brought the green of all things and the red of all things avatars? It seems that you are not prepared to surrender. All the rotting humans spoke at the same time, Their voices were as unpleasant as tearing cloth, but their words made Thea want to laugh. This guy had eyes but couldn't see that she was a god. He probably didn't even know the difference between old and new gods. Perhaps only such an idiot would be bewitched by the darkness of decay, give up the dignity of a god, and become a pawn. That's right, although this guy called himself the king of decay, he was nothing in the darkness of decay, and was not much more advanced than those rotting humans. At least he was once a god, even if he was a native god. Now that he had become like this, even Thea felt sorry for him. What was even more ridiculous was that he wanted to recruit them, but after seeing the swamp monster and animal man, he immediately gave up on the idea. What a stupid and ridiculous guy. However, since he mentioned the swamp monster, Thea naturally had to give him a chance to show his face. She nodded slightly, indicating for the swamp monster and animal man to go up first. Who knows, maybe this guy would just blabber and reveal the mastermind behind the scenes. Do not overestimate the intelligence of these villains. Their favorite pastime was blindly competing. They were also afraid that the heroes would not understand their plans, so they would not fight until they had explained everything clearly. Seth, today is the day you die. The Tree Council has sentenced you to death. You cannot be pardoned. The swamp monster yelled righteously. The punishment of the red of all beings is about to fall on your head. You monster. You will repent in hell for the death of all living creatures. Animal Hero also said, not to be outdone. Their declaration naturally drew the scorn of the villains. You're threatening me? Threatening a god? How many days has it been since you became the green of all things and the red of all things incarnations? How could you understand the principles contained in that power? I will tear off your flesh and blood. As the rotting humans spoke at the same time, a throne made of all kinds of bones slowly rose from the center of the city. A 5-meter-tall skeleton giant sat on it. Its body was covered in rotting flesh, both human and beast. Its head was not in the shape of a human, but more like some kind of insect. The 2 bloody holes in its eye sockets were looking at them with great interest. This is my kingdom, the territory of the Black of Decay. You're stupid enough to challenge me here. The skeleton giant Seth sneered with the help of the rotting humans. Speak, why did you start this war without caring about the balance of all things? Who ordered you to do this? The swamp monster asked according to the lines that Thea and Batman had prepared for him. I am the king of decay. As long as I want to, I can conquer all of this. Listen, I will send you a message through the wind of death. I am the god of storm, the lord of decay. Whether it is the ice field or the desert, I rule the land of death across the world. No one dares to order me around. Do you understand, you green freak? The god of storm did not use the rotting humans to send his message this time. Instead, he used the power of the wind to send his voice faintly discernible. See aside. This guy's Chunibu disease was hopeless. He was clearly a nobody, but he pretended to be a big shot. She stretched out 2 fingers and gestured the number 2. The swamp monster understood that she wanted him to use a second set of words. You're so powerful. I can't feel my green of all things. Thea and the rest's second set of plans was to show weakness to the enemy so that he would speak more and reveal more details. However, Professor Holland's acting skills were not complimentary. Fortunately, he was now an amalgamation of plants, so there were no facial expressions to observe. Plus, the other party was also brainless. The swamp monster spoke as if he was reciting a script, which made him very satisfied. Haha, this is nothing. This is just a small part of my ability. But you are not bad. Your understanding of the green of all things is comparable to my subordinate Anton Archaean's understanding of the black of decay. Although it is far inferior to mine, you can be proud. The skeletal giant said proudly. As it spoke, it finally noticed something strange. These guys in front of it had a calm look on their faces. They didn't show any signs of fear, panic, or anything like that. In fact, it was because Thea and the rest were whispering. Batman had asked about Miss Abby's 8 generations of ancestors, and he immediately realized the value of this name. Anton Archaean is Abby's uncle. This guy is likely to be the mastermind behind the scenes. Thea did not have a deep impression of the process in the Kingdom of Decay. She only vaguely remembered that in the end, she had a fight with Miss Abby's father or uncle. Unsurprisingly, it was this Anton Archaean. Kneel down, you lowly reptiles. You can live until now because of your low status. You are not worthy of me killing you personally. Now, your arrogance has made you give up your only chance to live. I am angry. I will punish you. The god of storm was completely annoyed by their disregard. This brainless guy stirred up his divine power. A sandstorm with high temperature was formed in his hands, and it was getting bigger and bigger. I will punish you in an unprecedented way. I will bury you here, in this land of death. I will bury you deep, but I will not let you die immediately. This is what I want. The more the god of storm spoke, the more agitated he became. The tornado he controlled gradually spread to a height of dozens of meters. The heroes remained unworried. This was because the tornado looked scary, but its wind speed wasn't fast. They could dodge it if they wanted to. Batman and the other two could not use much of their combat power. Superman looked at Thea, which meant, "Do you want to do it or should I? I will deal with it." Such an idiot is simply a disgrace to the gods. Thea took 2 steps forward. She looked at the guy who talked big, but his actual combat power was weak, and he did not have any self-awareness. Chapter 563. Thea had already gotten all the information she needed from the storm god, so there was no need to waste any more words. She started the fight with violence. This place had the characteristics of the kingdom of decay. Unlike Hades's underworld, which was filled with death, the fire, earth and darkness elements in the air had already reached a certain level. Sia wanted to use the thing that her opponent was best at to defeat her opponent. She instantly cast a fire tornado to neutralize the opponent's ultimate move that he had been holding back for a long time. Then, under her opponent's horrified gaze, Sia directly used the fire element to shape a fire dragon. The fire dragon tore the storm god into pieces in no time. Human sorcerer, you can't hurt me. I'm immortal. The storm god, who was smashed into pieces, could no longer use the wind to transmit his voice. He used the old method again, which was to use the broken vocal cords of the rotting people to speak. The storm god's body was quickly reassembled. As soon as he finished speaking, the storm god reassembled into a humanoid shape. However, the bones used this time seemed to be randomly extracted from a human or animal. It was far less textured than the previous ones. Thea frowned slightly. It was a little troublesome that the storm god couldn't be killed. It was not that the storm god couldn't be killed, but it was backed by the darkness of decay. Unless Thea erased the entire law, the storm god would be reborn again and again. Erasing the darkness of decay meant that the natural world was completely out of balance. She definitely couldn't do that. Human sorcerer? Is this the result of your eyeless brain's observation? You blind fellow, I'm the new god. Thea put away her playful attitude and finally became serious. Wasn't it just that the storm god couldn't be killed in a short period of time? How big of a deal was that? Countless anime and movies had given a good idea to the heroes who defeated the undying Demon King. If they couldn't kill the storm god, they could find a way to seal him. Thea had prepared several sealing devices to deal with Doomsday. At that time, Diana had used a lot of them to beat him until he was left with only a single drop of HP. The sealing devices had not found a use for them, so they could be used today. Once again, she teamed up with the fire dragon and tore the storm god into pieces. It's useless. It's useless. No matter how hard you try, you can't kill me. You're just wasting energy. Ha! Before the verbal cannon expert could finish his words, he found that his half-recovered head had been placed in a cage. Then, the woman who claimed to be a new god activated a switch. A dazzling electric light flashed, and he completely lost consciousness. An enhanced version of the quantized cage. It tastes sour, doesn't it? What Thea took out was the black technology she had plundered from the Sky's Eye Society when she established the Extraterrestrial Management Committee. The original version was a prison built to deal with superhumans, and now, Thea had mixed in a lot of alien technology. She had specially done experiments. Not to mention a living person with flesh and blood, even a dead person like Boston Brand, whose cause no one could explain, could be trapped in a quantized cage, much less this unknown god. When it was torn apart, its consciousness would spread out again. The cage was ineffective, but when it gathered, it would definitely form an energy core. As long as Thea found the core and locked it in the cage, there would be no turning back. The heroes could only bury the Demon King deep underground, which was too unreliable in Thea's eyes. She directly opened a portal, and without looking at the situation on the other side, she directly threw the cage more than 10 light-years away. Want to resurrect? That's going to be difficult. As the Lord of Decay, the Lord of Storms, Seth, was beheaded by her, the heroes worked together to clean up the remaining remnants. The entire city finally regained its peace, but the bustling city was no longer as bustling as it used to be. The landscape was completely destroyed, the layout of the city was gone, the drinking water was polluted, and the bacteria in the air far exceeded the normal value. This place was no longer suitable for living in a short period of time. 2 minutes after Thea reported the situation here to the White House, she received a piece of news that made her dumbfounded. Because the president was too worried about state affairs, he slipped and his head had an intimate contact with his desk. Now, he was urgently sent to the hospital. The conclusion of the discussion among the assistants was that the superheroes should deal with it themselves if they had the ability. The White House was very busy, and there was really no one to help them. This old thing was playing the blame game. Thea made a round of phone calls and found that the vice president had gone abroad for a visit 2 hours ago. As for the Secretary of State, he did not come to work today. The governor of Wyoming was straightforward. He submitted his resignation to the state legislature an hour after the disaster appeared. In short, none of the politicians who could manage things dared to take on this responsibility. In fact, they could not be blamed. From the perspective of ordinary people, at least 100,000 people were killed this time. The entire Wyoming was in ruins. This was too big a responsibility. If it was a biohazard crisis, they could still find a company to be the scapegoat. Now that it was not a biohazard attack, all of them chose to hide without exception. Thea also had to help the local government deal with the aftermath. After the flood and hurricane, there was the problem of disaster relief. The Black Decay did not have this problem at all. Those who came into contact with it were all dead. Those who were alive were not in contact with it, so it was very easy to judge. Batman and the others retreated first to look for Anton Archaean. Thea, who was very recognizable and almost a household name, began to command the local people to help themselves. Injured? There were almost no injured people. All the victims were burned in high temperatures. No one had the aesthetic to appreciate the broken city of Campbell County. It was completely destroyed by the bombs dropped by the local troops. The police and the National Guard were all equipped with weapons to maintain social order and arrest all the people who took advantage of the situation to loot. These people completely ignored the principles of trade, which made the goddess of trade and wealth very unhappy. A few of the most ruthless robbers were directly charged with treason. All the supplies of daily necessities were provided by the Quinn Group. The citizens whose homes were destroyed could receive supplies to last for 3 days. Clearing the roads, supplying electricity and water, restoring mobile phone signals, and gradually releasing the network restrictions, Thea commanded the remaining local organizations until the evening, when the state legislature temporarily elected an acting governor to take over all the work. Only then did she fly back to the metropolis. After fighting for 2 minutes, the trivial matters had been tormenting her for several hours. After drinking a few mouthfuls of water, she asked the child left behind, Beast Boy, "Have you found that Anton Archaean?" Beast Boy was a little unnatural in front of the female devil. "Ah, found him. They all went. What's the name of the place they went to? What's it called?" Seeing Thea raising her fist to punch him, the green-skinned boy was nervous. "Yes, Batman left a note for you." Thea took the note and read it. "Carpathian? That's really far." Beast Boy said obsequiously. Sister Abby said that it was her family's castle. Her evil uncle must be there. They all followed. Maxon was hidden by Batman, leaving me to look after the house. Big sister, can you take me to see it? Chapter 564. Thea thought for a moment as she watched Beast Boy pleading pitifully like a puppy. There was not much danger later, so it was not a big deal to kidnap this child from his home and bring him to take a look. Thea thought for a moment. "You can come with me, but you can't run around." Beast Boy nodded his head like a chick chewing on rice. Thea glared at him and found that his eyes were flickering. She knew that he had ignored her orders. Thea, who could be considered a master in dealing with naughty children, naturally had a way to make him obedient. Strict education had little effect, and threats and promises were the way to go. She took out the latest mobile phone from her bag and waved at the naughty child. "Look, this is a camera, this is a camera, and this is a video. You can listen to music and surf the internet. What do you think? Do you like it?" Beast Boy's bright eyes betrayed his true thoughts. Thea continued, "Next, you just need to record the entire battle, and this phone is yours. Really? After Beast Boy got Sia's confirmation, he was overjoyed. He began to study the various functions of the phone over and over again. He had long forgotten about his previous intention of looking around to watch the show. The Carpathian Mountains were located in Ukraine, which was a little far from America. Thea searched for a long time before she saw the figures of a few people. She had to admit that they were quite strong. Even without Thea's participation, the few of them fought well. The only bad news was that there was a new force involved. There was a sky-blue teleportation wave, and Thea brought Beast Boy to the other side. They traveled thousands of miles in the blink of an eye. When she arrived, she saw that the two sides were in full swing. The location was at least 1,000 meters above sea level. The temperature was very low, but there was still a lingering stench in the air. Beast Boy faithfully carried out his mission. He took out his phone and aimed it at the battlefield to start recording. Thea looked at both sides of the battlefield. On one side, there were 4 superheroes. Zatanna, Poison Ivy, Miss Abby, and a soul avatar in a cast iron box were standing at the back. Fighting side by side with the superheroes was a group of villains, Death Shooter, Clown Girl, and Killer Croc. The leader was Thea's old acquaintance, the mature girl Lila Michaels, and more than 10 agents of the Heaven's Eye Society. On the other side, it was even more lively. The citizens were roaring something as far as the eye could see. All of them were holding sickles and wooden sticks, desperately trying to stop the group's advance. How could such a bunch of useless soldiers stop Superman? Thea thought it was impossible. She took a closer look and realized that these people were different from the people in Wyoming. They had not been completely infiltrated by the darkness of decay. They were still alive. This was also the reason why Superman and Batman had their hands tied. Superman was now blocking the bullets from the Sky's Eye Association, while Batman was hammering the Clown Woman and Death Shooter. For a moment, it seemed like a 3-way battle. By the way, what are you doing? Where's Anton Archaean? Can't you just knock these ordinary people out? Thea was a little puzzled. The main character was not here, so why were they competing with these small soldiers? Lila had a good relationship with her. Her husband, John Deagle, was working under Thea. Besides, the Sky's Eye Association's top management knew that Moira wanted to go further, and the probability of success was very high. She could ignore Batman, but she could not ignore Thea. Amanda's order is to clean up all the remaining people here. The existence of these people is too dangerous. They must all be eliminated, Lila said in a businesslike manner. They can still be saved. Before Batman could speak, Superman was the first to object. Thea was a little confused. This was actually a matter of philosophy. Amanda thought that some people could be sacrificed to save the rest of the human race, while Superman was the kind of person who would save anyone he saw. The two sides were too different on the issue of principle. At this time, a few heroes who could fly over the heads of ordinary people and kill the mastermind behind the scenes quickly. In fact, it was not difficult. The difficult part was that the superheroes did not trust the Sky's Eye Association. They were afraid that these ordinary people would be killed as soon as they left. Of course, Thea felt that Lila and the others were thinking this way. You can control the first time, but you can't control the 15th time. If we withdraw today and sneak back tomorrow to kill them, you can't do anything. With Superman and Batman's intelligence, there was no doubt that they would think of this point. This was the focus of the dispute between the two sides. Seeing that both sides were waiting for her to clarify her position, Thea did not speak directly. In fact, she was inclined to eliminate the root of the problem. Many of the residents who blocked the way had lived here for a lifetime. It would be impossible to say that they were so slow that they did not know Anton Archaean's plan. They were not innocent. However, the position of the superheroes could not be lost. Thea could only think of a compromise. She directly caught a resident and began a thorough examination. The resident's brain, heart, and lungs were all fine. The only difference from ordinary people was that their nervous system had been transformed by the black decay. Their bodies were covered with black lines, which looked very scary at first glance. A light flashed between her fingers, and a healing spell was cast on the resident. The resident was like being thrown into a steamer. A large amount of fog came out of his body, mixed with a nauseating stench. However, when the fog dissipated, the black lines in the resident's body were still the same. The color was slightly lighter, but they were not eliminated. How is it? The Sky's Eye Association stopped, and the superheroes naturally withdrew. Superman asked with some uncertainty, little Thea also has an illness that can't be cured. How pitiful. This clown girl who did not treat herself as an outsider was in the late stages of mental illness. This guy squeezed into the middle of the crowd and saw Thea frowning. He was indescribably happy. The young mistress naturally would not bicker with a lunatic. She rolled her beautiful eyes before answering Superman's question. If I forcefully treat him, his nervous system will be destroyed. These people's bodies are very strange. Although they are said to be alive, their bodies have already begun to decay. Although they are said to be dead, their hearts and brains are still working. Their thoughts are a little chaotic, but their self-awareness is still there. Everyone, I have an idea that the green of all things can take away the power of the swamp monsters. Their decay comes from the black decay. Then, the black decay can also take away these things. When the time comes, there is a high chance that they will return to normal. She then looked at Lara. I will explain to Commander Amanda. Let's focus on eliminating the evil first. After this source is dealt with, I believe that we will find a solution to the remaining problems. She spoke very sincerely. Lara was not as violent as Amanda, who would destroy cities with missiles at the drop of a hat. She thought for a moment and nodded silently, agreeing to this plan for the time being. What the hell? Not killing again? Death Shooter was beaten up by Batman. His face was not looking too good, but the Suicide Squad had bombs hidden in their necks, so he did not dare to disobey orders. He could only curse a few times in annoyance. Chapter 565. Once everyone came to a consensus, the rest of the matter was easy to handle. After all, they were just a bunch of ordinary people. The several hundred residents blocking the road were quickly knocked down one by one. Poison Vine Lady took out many vines and tied them all up. Only then did the large group charge into the depths of the castle. Thea didn't do anything. As a new god, she wouldn't do anything to ordinary people. This was the pride of the gods. Her role was more to coordinate the relationship between the two sides. On the way, she began to ask Batman about the information he had found out. Miss Abby also added from time to time. Thea finally pieced together the plot of the Kingdom of Decay. Miss Abby's uncle, Anton Archaean, was actually a psychopath according to the classification of modern medicine. He had a very serious necrophilia plot. When Miss Abby was a child, this crazy uncle discovered the power in his niece's blood and began to study it tirelessly. In order to fully experience the power of corruption, he sewed the skin of the dead onto his own body and constantly fed Miss Abby sleeping pills so that he could draw her blood. Miss Abby's current silver hair was very beautiful and manly. In fact, it was all because of her unscrupulous uncle who kept feeding her sleeping pills. If it wasn't for the power of corruption that constantly gave her strength, she would have already died from overdosing on sleeping pills. Wearing rotten human skin and drinking his niece's blood, Anton Archaean had somehow obtained a trace of the power of the Black Decay. Like Poison Ivy, who was an unregistered member of the Green of All Things, and Beast Boy, who was an unregistered member of the Red of All Things, he also used all kinds of incredible methods to turn himself into an unregistered member of the Black of Decay. Hearing this, Sia only felt that these guys in the natural world were too careless. Every one of them had loopholes. This was not the untainted land, where they paid attention to the great Tao and the heavenly divination. Couldn't they just patch things up when they were bored? There were so many loopholes, and it was as if they had discussed it beforehand. This incident was not complicated at all. In order to become an official member, Miss Abby's uncle spent a lot of effort. First of all, he couldn't kill his niece. If he killed Miss Abby, she would automatically become an official member. Then, his efforts of more than 10 years would all be in vain. Anton Archaean, the psychopath, was quite smart. He had fed his niece a lot of chicken soup about how big the world was and how she should go out for a walk. He had deceived the destined embodiment of the Black Decay far away. Even when Miss Abby was first awakened by nightmares, he was the one who suggested that Miss Abby leave the city and go to those poor mountains. From his point of view, sending Black Decay's incarnation to Green of All Things territory was just a matter of minutes. Green of All Things definitely had a way to trap her soul. He didn't expect Miss Abby to have known the infatuated Dr. Holland long ago. The two of them reunited in a poor ravine, and they achieved something good. The Tree Council had ordered Professor Holland to kill this woman many times, but he refused every time. This caused the Tree Council to turn against him and take back his power. The two sides had been in a cold war for a long time until Thea returned to Earth. Anton Archaean, who had sent his niece away, saw someone's Pacific Rim plan on TV one day. He was secretly happy. He was waiting for Green of all things to be expelled by humans, and then he would benefit from the Black Decay's invasion of the human world. This was his entire plan. The storm god Seth, whose body had been separated from his body, was tricked out of Black Decay by a few words from him. This plan could be said to be so crude that it was almost non-existent. However, it was this simple plan that caused a heavy disaster to the world. Everyone was silent and didn't think too deeply about the meaning behind this plan. A few who could fly rushed into the town, and the rest of the people rushed in desperately like wild donkeys. When Superman kicked open a wooden door, the final trace of the mastermind finally appeared. Anton Archaean, or the former Anton Archaean, was barely maintaining his human form and standing in place. He looked at the heroes with a smile that wasn't a smile. Thea couldn't use words to describe this person's strength. He was the same as the residents who had blocked the road before. From a biological point of view, he was still a living person, but this guy had turned himself into a half-zombie. His body was covered in layers of human skin and animal skin. The skin was sewn together with threads, but the stitching was very rough. Some of the skin had already grown together with his body, and countless rotten insects were drilling in and out of his body. Behind him stood 3 big monsters. They didn't look like humans at all. They were complete monsters. The one on the left looked like a giant skinned mantis, the one in the middle looked like a giant worm, and the one on the right was an unknown object piled up with internal organs. Ouch! This is disgusting. Thea didn't want to take a second look. This guy was definitely a female hero's natural enemy. She wasn't the only one who felt uncomfortable. The heroes and the female agents of the Heaven's Eye Society who had arrived one after another didn't feel good. Even the psychopath clown girl pouted and clenched the baseball bat with an ugly expression. As for Zatanna and Lila Michaels, they were even more unbearable. Under the lead of Goddess Thea, all the women covered their noses and retreated to the second line. At such a solemn moment, it was better to let the male compatriots take the lead. Anton Archaean, you lunatic! You must be punished today. Batman was the first to speak. You don't understand the mystery of the operation of the universe at all. You are just scum. Let me formally introduce my new friend, the Third Hunter. There was too much rotten flesh on Anton Archaean's face, so it was hard to see his emotions. But from the analysis of his tone, he must be very proud at this time. The monsters behind him took a step forward at the same time. We are the rotten flesh that invaded the red of all beings. We are morbid and illusory bodies. We are the ultimate enemies of all living creatures. We are the Third Hunter. The 3 monsters made a dull sound from their mouth-like organs. They stood between the heroes and Anton Archaean with great momentum. You are the enemies of all beings red. Animal Man, who hadn't played any role, saw the enemies of all beings red. Without saying a word, he flew up, gathered the strength of a dinosaur, and punched the giant worm monster standing in the middle. The power of several tons made his fist sink directly into the head of the worm monster. This punch was like hitting the water surface. Unlike the splashing of water, this was the splattering of rotten flesh. The rotten flesh of various animals was like rain in all directions. Under the lead of Goddess Thea, several female heroes ran away with a whoosh. Several male heroes who were not afraid of hardships and tiredness also changed their expressions a little. Batman, who had unparalleled dodging ability, hid behind the door without thinking. Superman melted all the rotten flesh flying toward him with heat rays. The Archer of Death also found a place to hide. The only one who didn't hide was Killer Crocodile. Chapter 566. Flesh and blood flew all over the sky. In this horrifying scene, the heroines all stayed away, and several men were also a little uncomfortable. In order to go back and climb into Catwoman's bed smoothly, they all chose to attack from a distance. Batman raised his hand and fired 2 bat darts, which blew up the giant mantis monster on the left and covered the ground in pus. Death Shooter started to finish it off. Unfortunately, this thing wasn't fatal at all. No matter how good his marksmanship was, it was useless. Their strength was slightly weaker. Fortunately, Killer Crocodile was at the forefront and took a line of damage. The 3 of them fought the praying mantis monster and barely maintained a draw. The worm monster in the middle was being attacked by Animal Man and the swamp monster. The Black Decay here was also serious. The The two of them could not even use 30% of their strength, so it was very difficult for them to fight. Superman, who was on the right, had the absolute upper hand. Heat Ray and Frost Breath were beating up the Viscera monsters. However, these guys seemed to have found a secret door in Svalbard's red. Every time a piece of rotten meat was frozen or melted, it would be replenished. Relying on its powerful self-healing ability, it temporarily stalled Superman. The remaining male agents of the Heavenly Eye Society distributed their firepower to the three monsters. Let's go after Anton. The ladies hid outside and watched for a while. They found that Anton Archaean was blocking the heroes with the help of the three big monsters, and he himself was running to the back. Sia felt that she was partly responsible for this ecological imbalance. How could she watch the culprit escape? She told Lara and directly used a teleportation spell to bypass the three monsters blocking the way. Then, she led the female heroes, the female villains, and the female agents to chase after them. They did not need to use supervision to follow the stench. Anton Archaean, you beast! Miss Abby ran quite fast. She saw Anton's figure at the corner and raised her hand to shoot. The other party did not stop at all. Instead, he ran faster. Be careful of ambushes. Thea warned them and slowed down at the same time. The enemy was familiar with the terrain and was able to shake them off several times. Thea's magic also hit the enemy a few times, but unfortunately, it was not very effective. This kind of psychopath had a high resistance to abnormal conditions and was almost immune to magic that affected the mind. He had many layers of skin on his body, so his elemental resistance was not low. The indoor environment was not suitable for flying, so Thea could not catch up to him. Everyone followed him and turned left and right. They came to the door of a basement. Anton Archaean stopped. He did not even look at Thea and the others. Instead, he asked Miss Abby with great interest, "My dear niece, behind this door is the darkness of decay. This is the real world that I spent 30 years to communicate with. You and all of you. Do you dare to follow me?" The other party laughed like a villain, but when he laughed, his voice was sharp and thin, not pleasant at all. "Thank you for bringing us here. I had a few plans in mind." Thea stopped running and panting. In Anton Archaean's inexplicable eyes, a magic rope tied him up. Thea's hard pursuit was, of course, fake. The other party stayed here fearlessly instead of finding a place to hide. Apart from the conclusion that he was a brainless villain, there was only one possibility left. The other party still had a trump card in his hand. The previous 3 hunters were just hired thugs, and they were still far from the trump card. On the way to the chase, Thea thought about the connection. The other party could escape with the help of the darkness of decay, and even take advantage of the different flow of time between the two worlds to trick the pursuers. It was not difficult to guess, so she pretended to be helpless and chased all the way. Anton Archaean's resistance was not low, but it did not mean that he was not afraid of magic. Even Thea could not completely see through the ever-changing characteristics of magic, let alone this psychopath. Thea turned to Miss Abby and asked, "Is the darkness of decay behind the door?" She was pretending. Miss Abby was an ordinary person. After such a high-intensity running back and forth, she was really out of breath. She tried to adjust her breathing, and it took her a while to answer, "It should be. You can't stop the darkness of decay. Only my niece or I can solve all the problems. Hey, if my niece doesn't want to go in, you can only let me go. Let me go in." Anton Archaean, who was tied up, said proudly. It could be seen that he had thought about these words repeatedly, and the order was very reasonable. If Miss Abby did not want to go in herself, in order to stop the spread of the darkness of decay, letting him go was the only option. Thea gave the people of the Sky's Eye Society a reassuring look, indicating that she was prepared. Miss Abby also showed a grateful expression. With her supervision, she found the decaying clone in the box in the outside world. Thea silently used the land replacement spell. With a flash of blue light, she directly teleported the box. When they opened the box and revealed the decaying clone inside, the people of the Sky's Eye Society only felt inexplicably strange. Anton Archaean's face was full of surprise. Thea didn't care about him. She muttered to herself over there, repeatedly saying things like, "impossible," and "how could it be possible?" A fireball blasted the door. What appeared in front of them was not a basement, but a deep and dark void. Miss Abby began to communicate with the clone. The clone walked in shakily and finally disappeared into the void. Thea looked at Miss Abby a little nervously. She was still very confident about her plan, but it was better to be safe than sorry. If the darkness of decay did not recognize this fake, she could not go in herself. Fortunately, after 10 nervous minutes, Miss Abby finally woke up from her daze. I am free. It inherited the darkness of decay. I am finally free from my fate, Miss Abby said incoherently. Immediately stop the spread of the darkness of decay and withdraw the power of the residents outside, Thea immediately ordered. Wasn't this the reason why they went through so much trouble? Fortunately, nothing went wrong. Miss Abby connected again. Her clone seemed to have given some orders on the other side. The few people present didn't feel anything. Unlicensed Poison Ivy and Anton Archaean felt it the most. She, who didn't have any plants to control, summoned the plants again. Anton Archaean, who looked like a strong man before, shrank visibly. His strong body began to shrink rapidly. Large lumps of rotten flesh flowed out of his body like butter. Anton Archaean quickly shrank from a 2-meter-tall man to a skinny and lifeless old man. What should we do with this guy? Lara asked. If they dragged him to the International Court of Justice and told everyone that the current disaster on Earth was caused by him alone, and that there was no organization or gang behind the scenes, they would have to believe it. And it looked like he could die at any time. Chapter 567. He won't live for long. Thea saw that the old man was on his last breath, and she couldn't think of a good way to deal with him. Let me in, let me in. His body shrank, and the binding effect of the magic rope also disappeared. After all, it wasn't a fairy rope, and it didn't have the ability to shrink with the human body. The old man was freed and began to tremble as he tried to climb into the door. Clown Girl was very happy and wanted to hit him with a bat, but Lara hurriedly stopped her with a look. This person was very difficult to deal with. What crime should she use to punish him? Destroy the environment? The current law couldn't punish him at all. Shooting or imprisoning him was actually not appropriate. Thea thought deeper. This guy was too deeply infected by the black decay. Now that Miss Abby had taken back her power, Anton Archaean's human soul had been completely contaminated. The current situation was that as soon as he died, he would immediately report inside. Killing him would be fulfilling his wish. Although the black decay had changed hands, the clone inside didn't have a brain at all. It was hard to say whether Anton Archaean would fight back or not. This made her unable to make a decision for a long time. She couldn't make a decision, but she couldn't follow his wishes and let the old man slip in. Thea summoned a magic rope and tied the old man to a tree. She was afraid that he would suddenly die, so she gave him 2 injections of nutrient solution. She was going to wait for them to finish studying before deciding on the final treatment plan. As the black decay shrank, the third hunter, who relied on his own meat to deal with the heroes, was quickly beaten into a pile of mud. The heroes also rushed in. How to deal with the old man was also difficult for Superman and Batman. In the end, under Thea's suggestion, they threw Anton Archaean into the tree parliament and let the Green of all things deal with him. The matter was finally settled, and everyone went back home. Thea also sent Beast Boy back to San Francisco, but this guy relied on Thea's familiarity and wanted to transfer to California, saying that he wanted a change of environment. Are you interested in Animal Hero's daughter? Thea guessed the boy's intentions with a little guess. Big sister is so wise. Little Beast laughed awkwardly. This was not a big deal. Thea thought about it and picked up the phone to help him with the admission procedures. As for what he could do in the future, it was up to him. After that, she hurried to Louisiana, where the swamp monster and Miss Abby were preparing to live in seclusion. Professor Holland, are you sure you want to do this? Thea asked. The swamp monster was inspired by Miss Abby's soul division. If she could do it, so could it. A man and a woman were better than a monster and a woman together. To be honest, he was a little tired of being a swamp monster. If he could be free without affecting the overall situation, it would be a happy ending for everyone. I'm very sure. Thea had always felt that she owed him a favor. She wanted him to stay away from trouble and live with the person he loved. No matter how she looked at it, this was repaying the help he had given her in the past. She divided the soul again and spent a lot of effort to create a clone of the swamp monster. In the afterglow of the setting sun, they watched the swamp monster slowly walk into the forest. The two of them held hands to thank Thea. Thea also felt a sense of accomplishment. She changed the destined Lao Yen flying together to fly together. She felt a hint of karma from it. If the swamp monster hadn't helped her activate her bloodline, Thea wouldn't have helped him divide the soul today. It was hard to say who helped who. Others had a happy life, but Miss Abby's life still had to go on. The Black Decay had hit the global economy hard. Nowadays, a gunshot on Wall Street could set the world economy back by a month. Not to mention this kind of destructive disaster comparable to a natural disaster. The economic problem was actually a small problem. The Earth's resources were used less and less. If they continued to overexploit, the scale of the next disaster would be even bigger. After considering several aspects, it was urgent to start the early stage of interstellar travel and interstellar resource collection. Thea called the secretary and began to read the various materials collected by Luthor. Although Lex Luthor was in prison, many of his experimental notes were left behind. This human, who was called a Level 9 intelligence by Brainiac, was indeed extraordinary. He didn't have a spaceship and couldn't survive in space, but by relying on satellite exploration, digital modeling, and environmental analysis, he had roughly calculated the resource allocation of the entire solar system and made a detailed plan. Thea, who had acquired all of Luthor's high-end enterprises and secretaries, could naturally make some arrangements on this basis. After studying various materials for 2 days, Thea had confirmed the next step, which was to develop Mars. This star was twice the diameter of the Moon and half the size of the Earth. Its surface was covered with sand dunes and there was no stable liquid water. It could be said to be a desertified planet. However, humans didn't just name this place Mars. Countless hematite ores rose and fell one after another among the sand dunes. All kinds of rare metals were important materials needed for the Pacific Rim project. This place could be built as a resource collection point and an outpost for human space travel. What were resources? In modern society, even a 3-year-old child knew that resources were money. It wasn't difficult to persuade countries to participate if there were benefits. The difficult part was the early exploration. Was there life on Mars? This scientific argument had been debated for 20 years. Thea didn't dare to tell them that not only were there people on Mars, but they were also very fierce. The fiercest one of them could wrestle with Superman. Speaking of which, Earthlings were really blessed. A group of Martians with the ability to write 400 words lived 50 million kilometers away from Earth. These Martians, who had terrifying abilities without basking in the sun, had all died inexplicably. Only one of them had come to Earth, and this one of them was the most loving and kindest one. If they didn't die, Thea felt that the Earth would have returned to a slave society 800 years ago. It was better to investigate the situation on Mars first so that they could persuade countries later. Thea could go by herself, but she thought that there was a guide here, so it was better to ask him to come along. In the director's office of the Super Investigation Department, the Martian hunter disguised as an ordinary person had just taken a sip of water when he saw Thea walk out. "Your spiritual attainment seems to have improved. Tell me what's the matter." The Martian hunter didn't know what a new god was, but he felt that Thea was a little mysterious. "Haha, Uncle Ronjen, this is why I'm looking for you." Thea told him her thoughts from beginning to end, especially mentioning the huge impact it would have on human civilization. The Martian hunter didn't look too good. He asked hesitantly, "Can we change to another planet?" Thea thought for a while. "Pluto is fine, but it's too far away from the Earth. It's not easy to influence public opinion. Mars doesn't have this problem. The Internet has been calling for the development of Mars for many years. In fact, Thea knew that developing Mars was like digging up the graves of their ancestors. Even after a few centuries, most of the Martian hunters' family members were burned to ashes and their ashes were still buried in the depths of the planet. Thea didn't want to force him, but the resources of Mars were really important. Before humans found a new substitute, steel would always be the most important resource. In the future interstellar trade, aliens wouldn't recognize dollars or euros. For the Earth, which had just entered the interstellar civilization, material exchange was the mainstream. Chapter 568. The demand for various metals would increase in the future, and the development of Mars was essential. Regardless of whether the Martian hunter was willing or not, unless he stood against the entire human race, he would have to face this. If he was willing, he could move the bodies of his loved ones to Earth. If he was unwilling, Thea could also help him set up a seal. Other than big shots like Darkseid, ordinary people would not be able to break her seal. Thea did not say these words. The key problem with the Martian hunter was his heart. Earth was so close to Mars, and he could go back at any time if he wanted to. It was just that he had not gone back for centuries. Not even once. It was a little difficult to help him rebuild his confidence and get rid of his fear of fire. Ordinary people would be able to recover after a few counseling sessions, but he was different. His strong psychic ability magnified his fear of fire, and his fear of fire had affected him from the spiritual level to the physical level. Thea could not solve this problem. The Martian hunter's resistance was too high, and even magic was useless. He could only rely on himself. After a full half an hour, the Martian hunter said with a tired face, "When are you going?" After receiving Thea's wish to leave immediately, he hesitated for a moment, gritted his teeth, and decided to go. The two of them did not inform anyone. Thea had the suggestion spell, and the Martian hunter had the invisibility spell. The two of them did not alert anyone and flew directly out of the atmosphere. To them, the distance of 55 million kilometers was not much longer than the time it took for them to travel from New York to Philadelphia. Looking at the familiar yet strange planet, the Martian hunter was indescribably sad. He had removed his disguise during the flight. Apart from the last time she saw him in his spiritualized form when he wiped out Hercules' crazy thoughts, this was the first time Sia had seen the Martian hunter in his true form on the material plane. The Martian hunter was 2 meters tall, with dark green skin and a purple coat and cape. Instead of flying, he landed on the ground. In this desert environment, Thea's Gucci dress that she wore when she came out of the office was a little eye-catching. As she had shares in several major luxury companies in the world, they would give her a batch of clothes, shoes, and bags every month. Now that the Martian hunter was so depressed and dressed so formally, Thea had to correct her attitude. With a thought, she changed into the clothes of the new creator planet. She named it the Divine Robe of God's Punishment. Unlike the god's armor made by Zeus, Thea chose this robe mainly because of the hood on the robe. Wearing the hood could not only block the wind and sand, but also because it covered most of her face, making her look very mysterious. It was very suitable for this kind of solemn environment. The two of them walked on the ground with heavy footsteps. The Martian hunter was reminiscing about the past. Sometimes he would talk to himself and introduce the past. There used to be a city there, and the people there were very kind. The northwest direction was once attacked by a space monster. At that time 20 of us killed it. Its corpse is still buried underground. This is my home. My father, mother, wife, and daughter all live here. Thea followed him all the way with her hands behind her back. The Martian hunter would talk about the past from time to time. In Thea's eyes, this was just a desert. God knows how he determined the specific location. When the two of them stopped in front of a stone pit, the tall Martian hunter burst into tears and knelt on the ground, sobbing. This used to be his home. It used to be the strongest harbor in his heart. Unfortunately, it was all gone now. Unlike Superman, the Martian hunter had lived for hundreds of years. He had lived alone on Earth for hundreds of years. Even though his lifespan was still long, his mentality was already old. Thea did not know how to comfort him. She was not good at this kind of thing. While waiting, she activated her supervision and looked at the planet's mineral resources. Just as she was looking around aimlessly, a grayish-white metallic luster attracted her attention. When she was about to take a closer look, the metallic body emitted a special wave that blocked her probing. It would be strange if there was no abnormality. Thea pulled the Martian hunter who was still crying silently. Uncle Ronjen, there is an abnormal object 19,000 meters to the south. It doesn't look like a natural creation. The Martian hunter, who was full of question marks, saw her serious look and stopped being pessimistic. Unlike the people on Earth who had 5 senses, the Martians had 9 senses. His searching ability was not inferior to Superman's. Following the direction Sia was pointing at, he took a closer look. His expression changed drastically, and he flew over instantly. Thea could only follow closely. Just as she was about to ask what it was, she saw the Martian hunter use a large area of psychic impact. This person used his psychic ability to clean up the piles of debris outside the grayish-white object. At this time, Thea could also see that the grayish-white object was a spaceship. Judging from its size, it was a small single-person spaceship. It was just that it had been buried in the rocks before. Coupled with the passage of time and the dust of this planet, it looked gray and inconspicuous. This is? Thea saw the Martian hunter's expression as if he had seen a ghost and already had some guesses. The result was not surprising. This is a Martian spaceship. Judging from the traces at the scene, the spaceship has been here for less than 20 years. How is this possible? I should be the last Martian. The Martian hunter's expression was very interesting. Fear, surprise, disbelief, and a trace of hope. All kinds of emotions were mixed together. This spaceship was very strange. It seemed to be using some kind of psychic power to prevent her from prying. Sia could not figure out how such an idealistic thing like psychic power could be applied to a technological spaceship. This was completely different from her inherent knowledge system. Looking at the Martian hunter's confused expression, she could only do it herself. She was not dismantling the spaceship, just opening the cockpit. This small matter was not difficult for her. There's no one inside. Looking at the size of this cabin, it doesn't look like it's for a tall person like you. Is this a spaceship for you young people? The display is still charged. Come and see if there are any messages left. Thea did not speak Martian, but the light ring had a translation function. However, the ready-made Martian was right in front of her, and she was too lazy to take it out. The Martian hunter took 2 deep breaths and began to read the words on the display. As he read, he muttered to himself, "This spaceship returned to Mars 20 years ago?" The spaceship's recorder shows that the other party is investigating the real cause of the Martian's extinction. The owner of this spaceship is Megan Moss? Looking at the Martian hunter's face alternating between white and green, Thea suspected that he would suddenly transform into a white Martian. She asked curiously, "This Megan is? She should be my niece, but the Moss family is very large. She has more than 300 brothers and sisters of the same generation, including her cousins. I'm a little dizzy, and I'm not very sure if this is the family that I remember." Chapter 569. The Martian hunter said a number in an uncertain tone. Thea's eyes widened. Their way of reproduction was indeed very different from that of humans. There were more than 300 siblings of the same generation. As an elder, it was indeed a very confusing thing. "Did your niece say where she went?" Sia had already come into contact with several members of the Young Titans. Whether it was Damien Raven or Beast Boy whom she had met a few days ago, they had all given her a good impression. The niece of the Martian hunter would be the young superhero codenamed Martian Maiden. The Martian hunter was more concerned than she was. He carefully browsed through it twice and shook his head. She only mentioned that she went to the east to search, but there was no follow-up information. This is too strange. She's still young, and her ability is not enough to fly in the universe. The two's mission changed from exploring the planet's mineral resources to searching for people. Thea followed the Martian hunter and searched for 5 minutes, but they did not see anyone. This planet was too desolate, and the climate was too harsh. On Earth, there was a saying that the sun rose in the east and the rain in the west. On Mars, this planet was only 1/6 the size of Earth. The two of them circled the planet 3 times, and the whole planet was covered in sand and wind. Too much time had passed. The Martian hunter searched for a long time with his 9 senses, but there was no trace of her. He could only turn around and look at Thea. After knowing her for so many years, this strange earthling always had some methods that he did not understand. "Send me your niece's image." The Martian hunter did not know what to do. He lowered his head and pondered for a long time before sending a photo to Thea through the telepathic channel. He said a little embarrassedly, "It's been too long. I don't have a deep impression of her." Thea closed her eyes and carefully looked at the photo. She almost laughed out loud. The Martian hunter did not remember what his niece looked like. It was really difficult to find this niece among the hundreds of juniors after a few centuries. He did not know what Thea's intention was, but he sent 5 photos in one go. With a name and a rough picture, it was easy to find. Thea took out Croydon's compass. This thing was simply a tool for searching for people and things. However, this was the first time she used it to find aliens. Thea was not very sure if it would work. Facts had proven the greatness of magic. This compass ignored the difference between Earth and other planets. It was indeed useful. After Thea inputted the target, the needle began to move slowly and powerfully. Sometimes it would fly past 5 degrees, and sometimes it would go back 1 or 2 degrees. Finally, the needle pointed firmly to the north. "Your family is still on this planet," Thea reassured the Martian hunter. Then, the two of them started to search according to the coordinates. After flying for more than 30,000 miles, they arrived at a very ordinary wasteland. The needle conveyed a signal to Thea. They had arrived. This was the place. What's in here? Thea looked left and right but couldn't find any clues. The area under her feet was very ordinary. There were no craters or hematite. She really couldn't see anything unusual here. But magic power couldn't be faked, and the compass couldn't be wrong. There must be some mystery here that hadn't been discovered. Where was this place before? Thea asked. What kind of place is this? The Martian hunter looked at the wasteland and was also confused. He had been in those areas before, so he was still quite familiar with them. This place was already very remote. Fortunately, he loved his home very much. He directly activated his powerful psychic ability and dug out the image of that day from his memory. Then, like a computer modeling, he rearranged his memory on the surface of the planet and determined the location of the two of them. When the final information was confirmed, he couldn't help but let out a "huh." Before Thea could ask, he explained, "If I'm not wrong, this is, according to the language of Earth, this is the aristocratic area. The Megan family is aristocratic, and I'm a commoner. Aristocrats are born with powerful psychic abilities and are the strongest in the entire race." Thea's expression was a little playful. "Are you kidding me? If your aristocrats were stronger than you Martians would have unified the universe long ago. If it weren't for the fatal flaw of being afraid of fire, Thea, this new god, wouldn't dare to say that she could defeat the Martian hunter. It was because his racial talents were too strong. He was immune to physical and magical attacks, psychic control, infinite strength, and unparalleled regenerative abilities. Even if his head was cut off, another one would automatically grow out. He could fly and survive in the universe. There wasn't a need for too many people like this. 7 or 8 of them could defeat the Green Lantern Corps and the Little Blue Men. The Martian hunter had been holed up on Earth all this time. He didn't know how strong he was. Before she could instill the correct worldview in the old Martian hunter, Thea sized up the area again. Her psychic feelers began to dig deeper. When her psychic power reached 10,000 meters underground, it was bounced back by a powerful barrier. Thea was shocked this time. She felt something. Although it was a little vague, the rhythm couldn't be wrong. It seemed to be divine power that bounced back her psychic power. She seemed to have discovered something very strange. Did Martians have a god? When Thea told the Martian hunter about her discovery, he was a little uncertain. "You mean to say that there has always been a god on our planet? It's not a figment of the imagination in those artistic works, but a real god with flesh and blood? I'm not sure what kind of life form it is, but there is no doubt that there is divine power below. Do you think it's surprising that there is a god? Hercules, who you've seen, is a god on Earth. Diana is also a god, and so am I." Thea felt that her acting was very good. She spoke calmly as if she was talking about something irrelevant. Especially when coupled with her dazzling golden robe, which Thea named God's Punishment, and her hood, which was more than half covered, she stood in the air with her hands behind her back. Whether it was her appearance or her rhythm, it was a strong visual impact. The mysterious aura contained in the silence was really suitable for the title of God. The Martian hunter felt that her words were a little strange, but he didn't think too much about the gods. "We civilians can't come into contact with the gods. I always thought it was a kind of spiritual sustenance. I never knew that there was a god on Mars who had been watching us. Let's go down first. Your niece is probably down there." Such a big hidden danger had to be eliminated first. If this god jumped out when the other countries were to investigate later, it would be a big problem. The depth of 10,000 meters was not a problem for the two of them. The Martian hunter could enter the formless state, which was an ability that couldn't be explained by modern physics. Thea could even switch between reality and illusion. The two of them dived quickly. When they reached a layer of colorless and transparent barrier, they stopped in their tracks. Thea felt the divine power slightly. The other party was not a new god. There was no doubt about that. Judging from the waves of divine power, it should be stronger than Apollo and Hera. The Martians had a civilization of tens of thousands of years. Now that there were only 2 of them left, the probability of them believing in a god was very low. Chapter 570. If the probability of a god of belief was low, then the probability of the other party being a primordial god or a nature god was very high. These gods were all born from the world. For example, Zeus was a nature god. From a human's point of view, he was a playboy and was simply a scumbag. However, from his point of view, he was a part of nature. It was his nature to pursue beautiful things. How could he be forced to use human standards to ask of him? Nature gods were generally stronger than belief gods. Although Zeus was an old god, he could go against the Heavenly Father. This was very telling. Now, facing this unknown Martian god, she was a little worried. Thea's understanding of DC was only at the level of an ordinary person. She was definitely not very familiar with it. It was like she knew about Animal Man but did not know his name. This inexplicable Martian god in front of her made her a little flinch. She really did not know the details of this god. It would be troublesome if he was a god of space, time, and death. Just as she was wondering if she should go back and call some people to form a team to deal with this unknown entity next time, the Martian hunter could not wait to see his loved ones. He roared and used his powerful psionic power to force a hole in the divine barrier. The Martian hunter took the lead and rushed in. Thea could only run in helplessly. At the same time, she was thinking in her heart. If she could win, then she would fight. If she could not, then she would use the sonic boom to return to the new creation star. She was someone with a backer. Her Heavenly Father would not sit by and do nothing. Moreover, in this day and age, other than Batman, no one, God, could fight their way into the fourth world alone. If the other party was fierce and even the Heavenly Father was no match for him, then Thea could only accept her fate. However, the probability of this happening was very small. It was almost non-existent. This was the most pessimistic outcome. At this time, Thea was still very confident in herself. One or a few unknown Martian gods were still within her range of tolerance. Oh my God! I never knew there was such an area underground. The Martian hunter who rushed in first quickly stopped in his tracks. He seemed to be in disbelief. The buildings here were grotesque and variegated, and the style was like a ring. In the depths of this 10,000 meters underground, there was a miniature city, but now it was very dilapidated. Sia half-squatted and reached out her hand to brush between the stone pillars of an inverted tower. The material here was completely different from that on Earth, as if it was built by psychic power. The surrounding stone walls were engraved with words. Thea took out a light ring, switched to the language translation function, and read carefully. Malakadila. This was what the Martians called their planet. It meant the Star of Hope and the Harbor of the Soul. This miniature city was the aristocrat mentioned by the Martian hunter. It was built in secret to worship a god called Hramier. The description on the wall was very vague. It only vaguely mentioned the word, art, a few times. Could it be that the other party was a god of art? Thea felt that this was good news and immediately put her heart back into her stomach. The god of art, just from this name, she knew that it was not that powerful. Thea hadn't forgotten about the mission of finding the missing person. She took out the compass to confirm the location again. The two of them walked and stopped in the miniature city and finally arrived in front of a palace. A small figure was lying flat on the table made of mental power. Megan? Wake up. I'm your Uncle Ron Jen. The Martian hunter was now so excited to see a member of her clan that she couldn't sleep for 3 days, let alone a relative. Although the scale of their family was a little big, Thea felt that the other party probably didn't remember that she had a civilian background. Uncle Ron Jen. She seems to have entered a deep sleep. Do you need me to wake her up? Thea looked at the green-skinned little girl. She looked very young and had no injuries on her body. However, the other party had suppressed her mental power to an extremely deep level in her spiritual world. Some preliminary preparations needed to be done to wake her up. No, she used a high-level Martian mental skill. I have a better way to wake her up. Before the Martian hunter could finish her words, she was interrupted by a strange voice. It was strange because the voice didn't seem to be coming from a vocal organ. It was a bit like the sizzling sound of fire burning wood. The voice was coherent rhythmically, as if it was talking. The other party was using the Martian language, and the two of them could understand it. This collection can't be touched casually, huh? There's actually a living Martian? I just wanted to collect a Martian. Why did another one jump out? How troublesome. What accompanied the voice was scorching heat. The temperature in the air rose rapidly. Thea and the Martian hunter were sweating. The Martian hunter felt the shadow of the flame. He knew that he shouldn't retreat at this time, but his body was powerless to resist. He forced himself to stand, and sweat kept seeping out of his green skin. Thea was literally sweating. What the hell was this? Could this Martian be a fire god? This made her very depressed. The Martian hunter could relax and do whatever he wanted. This bastard. She looked in the direction of the voice unhappily. The other party didn't give her a feeling of invincibility. After becoming a god, she trusted her feelings more and more. She could tell at a glance if the other party was weaker than her. If the other party was stronger than her, but not stronger than the father, she would have a rough estimate. The guy in front of her, who only talked and didn't show up, didn't give her any danger signals. His real combat power was hard to estimate. She thought that the other party was weaker than Zeus the father and the other gods. This made her sigh in relief. I'll go in and take a look. You stay here, Thea said. The Martian hunter tried to move forward several times, but his fear of fire made it difficult for him to move. Be careful. If you can't do it, retreat. Feeling that the other party was weaker than her, Thea's cautious attitude was reduced by half. Her confidence came back. Half of her face was covered by the hood, but her smooth jade-like chin had a hint of pride. Don't worry, I'm also a god. Leaving the Martian hunter behind to look after his niece, Thea walked in the direction of the voice. When she saw the Martian god in a pool of magma, she was happy. In the spacious and huge cave, they saw the god of Mars who was transmitting his voice from 1,000 miles away. The god of Mars was 100 meters tall. Compared to him, Sia was like an insect. The magma near the core of the planet was quite spacious, but to his huge body, it was like a small pond. Thea carefully looked at the Martian god opposite her. From his appearance, he didn't look like a Martian at all. She could barely make out a human figure with a head, a torso, and 4 limbs. Unlike Thea's divine body, half of his body was made of flames, and the rest of his body was made of hot rocks. Although Thea had never come into contact with an elemental god, her vision had long surpassed the level of mortals. This Martian god was not completely elementalized. The rocks in his body were proof. Chapter 571. If one could not have multiple roles like the Heavenly Father and Darkseid, then the pursuit of purity was the only way out for the old gods. Sia, of course, cut off all excess energy, and Apollo, who only attacked with the energy of the sun, were proof of this. The Martian god tried to elementalize his body, but the rocks in his body exposed his shortcomings. At the very least, he was not pure. In a battle of the same level, this was equivalent to writing one's own weaknesses on one's forehead and telling one's opponent how to defeat him. From this, it could be deduced that the Martian god was not originally a fire-related god. He only became a fire-related god later on, and it was not very successful. You can't move freely, right? Can you only stay in this magma? How sad. Thea looked around and asked tentatively. The Martian god also sensed Thea's divine power, but the divine power of a new god was very different from that of an old god. The Martian god did not know where Thea came from, so he avoided answering the magma question. I am the god of fire, art and death. Do not use your narrow vision to judge the supreme existence. You are qualified to be my subordinate, and I can teach you new knowledge. It is a treasure that you can only dream of. Sia scoffed at art and fire, but when she heard about death, she narrowed her eyes. It was because the power of death was too strong. Even Darkseid could not resist death, let alone Sia, who was weak and frail. Death was everywhere. Whether it was mortals, gods, or the entire universe, there would be a day when the universe would come to an end. The eternal life of the gods was linked to the universe they were in. If the universe died, they would also die. Not only Thea, but all gods were in awe of death. Many gods secretly studied what death was and how to avoid it. This was what all the good and evil gods did. The so-called death of Doomsday was the death that was bestowed by him. It was the death of all living beings, and it was a kind of crazy killing intent. The candles obtained from the top of Hades's head were the door between the dead and the living. It was the death between life and death. During the descent of the Rotten Kingdom, with her character of taking advantage of every opportunity and squeezing oil out of a stone, she naturally intercepted a portion of the harvest and helped the swamp monster and Miss Abby split their souls to create doppelgangers. No matter if it was the black decay or the green of all creation, she secretly intercepted a portion of them. The green of all creation was given to Poison Vine Lady for research, while the black of decay was personally tested by her. The black of decay also contained the power of death, but this kind of death was brought about through decay. It could only be said that it was an adjunct of decay. He also collected a lot of things that belonged to ordinary people, such as the fire-resistant bricks that had been used in crematoria for 30 years, the trees that many young men and women hung themselves from, and the weapons used by many serial killers. She had gathered a whole bunch of bits and pieces, but it was all to no avail. Perhaps it was because of his personality, or perhaps it was because of his deity position, but she couldn't find anything. Now that she heard that the big guy in front of her also had the deity position of death, she couldn't help but be cautious. Just like Hades, he had studied death for tens of thousands of years, but he didn't dare to say that he had understood it. If she guessed correctly, he was the Helamir of Malakadra, Mars, that was praised on the stone walls in the outside world, the god of flame, art, and death. Three alien gods that didn't really fit together claimed to have seen through the mystery of life and death. This made her cautious. You are the god of art that the Martians praise in the outside world, right? I can roughly think of the flame, but how did you obtain the deity position of death? Thea asked. The new gods fused with the origin and brought about the deity position, while the old gods comprehended from the big rules and obtained the deity position. There was an essential difference between the two, but part of the meaning could be used for reference. As if mentioning the other party's proud deeds, the Martian god named Helamir also wanted to share his experience with this strange god. His voice was still unpleasant like sawing wood. How to obtain the deity position of death? Of course, it was from a large number of deaths. Annihilation. I saw the end of all things from death. Only by personally ending them could I obtain this illusory power. Sia had a bad feeling. Who are they? Who are they? The Martians? That's right, that's what death told me. Only by cutting off all ties could I obtain the favor of death. I bestowed the curse of Helamir and spread it among the Martians through telepathy. Overnight, they were all burned to death by the fire of their souls, haha. Gathering the power of everyone's souls, I opened the door of death. I obtained a new life. Thea's face was extremely ugly. You killed all the Martians. They were the people who worshipped you, the source of your faith. Helamir said contemptuously. They were all burdens. Only one's own power is eternal. Thea was completely speechless. She admitted that she wasn't a good person, but she wasn't evil to such an extent. Just for a possibility, he slaughtered the people who had worshipped him for thousands of years. This kind of guy didn't deserve to be a god. Thea was a little angry, especially when she thought that the Martian hunter outside had his family destroyed because of this guy. Her relationship with the Martian hunter was not as good as her relationship with Batman. This was mainly because the Martian hunter's fatherly love was too strong. All the young and beautiful girls were his daughters. Thea's age was neither too old nor too young. In order to avoid trouble, she always deliberately angered the Martian hunter. The two bickered many times. They didn't act like elders, and they didn't act like peers. Slowly, they got used to this way of getting along. Now that she knew that the person she respected very much, a person who deserved everyone's respect, a person who was thoroughly good, his whole life was affected by this monster in front of her, Thea was burning with anger. You deserve to die. You bastard. You don't deserve the title of God. Thea took out the sword of victory and pledge and roared loudly. The holy sword began to gather all kinds of colors with her anger. She wanted to seek justice for all the Martians who had died unjustly. Revenge for the unjustly dead. This was her justice. The hero mirror in front of her was completely evil. Thea's eyes were unprecedentedly firm. The holy sword in her hand drew a beautiful arc and slashed towards Hero Mir. Idiot! You're waving your sword at a true god. Kneel down now and I'll forgive you. Hero Mir was indeed unable to move. He could only condense a golden flame in the palm of his hand and deflect the attack of the holy sword from the side. Since the fight had already started, Thea wasn't going to talk to him at all. This huge cave was full of fire elements, and water element magic was completely ineffective. It was obviously unwise to use fire to attack him. Thea used the holy sword as a staff. She tapped the ground lightly and summoned a 100-meter-tall stone giant. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that this giant had the appearance of a Martian. In order to confirm her guess, she summoned another one. Chapter 572. The second summoned giant looked even more like a Martian. Thea felt that she had found a part of the truth. After commanding the two giants to attack Romare, Thea knelt down on one knee and touched the ground. At the same time, she used the emotions of pity to communicate. The earth first tried to communicate with her, and soon both sides reached a consensus. Thea stood up silently. The Martian hunters could be said to be dead, but it could also be said that they were still alive. The powerful spiritual power not only helped Romare to be reborn and obtain the death godhood, But when their power gathered together, it also replaced the original will of the planet. Romare had to die. This was the only request of the will of Malexandra, Mars. In order to achieve this, they interfered with the fusion of the fire element, causing Romare to be halfway through the fusion. He was afraid that they would do something to him, so he did not dare to enter the spiritual world to fuse with the fire element. 20 years ago, he had also hypnotized Megan Moss, all for the sake of protecting the last Martian. Don't listen to Rommel's bragging. What collection? He couldn't even leave this cave. What kind of collection would he have? Now, Sia's interference had given them a chance to take revenge. The stone giant summoned by her exploded with 300% of its strength. Even though it knew that it was no match for Romare, it still attacked Romare. Thea didn't drop the ball either. She began to accumulate the power of the Holy Sword, preparing to end the battle with a single strike. After all, this wasn't a game. It was impossible to know how much HP would be dealt in one strike and how much HP would be dealt in 2 strikes. When the HP bar was empty, the opponent would directly fall to the ground. This was very inconceivable in a battle between gods. The battle would only end if the opponent was dealt fatal damage in 1 strike. Otherwise, it would be like Thea's battle with Madelon on the new planet. Both sides fought for a long time, but neither side was injured. Using the Holy Sword to gather the will of the masses would require some effort on Earth. Now, there was no need to gather on Mars. They had already gathered together, and they were very honest. As long as they could kill Romare, they could use their spiritual power as they wished. After centuries of erosion, there were at least tens of thousands of spirit bodies that still held strong hatred and had not been assimilated. These were the essence of the Martians. Even if they were not as good as the Martian hunters, they were still the best of the best. A conservative estimate was that from a spiritual point of view, 1 Martian was equivalent to 10,000 Earthlings. Just a single person's spirit energy was enough to materialize and affect the physical world from the mental world. Now that the hatred of the entire race was gathered together and unleashed 100-fold power through the sacred sword, the immense spirit energy caused even Thea's divine body to feel heavy. Not enough again. It was a perfect match for the Holy Sword to desire even more, and Thea also wanted to see just how much she could improve after ascending to godhood. She wanted even more. The planet's will was overjoyed. Previously, they had protected Megan Moss in order to allow the little girl to attain great success in her divine technique as soon as possible. Carrying their faith, they would be able to take revenge. Although the hope wasn't great, it was still hope. Now that Thea had jumped out to help, she actually felt that their power was not enough. This caused the planet's will to begin to transfer energy even more wildly. When all the power of a cheetah race was gathered together, it was simply impossible to calculate with numbers. Scram, scram. Ron Mill was not a fool. Seeing Thea preparing her ultimate move, if he did not do anything, then he would have really lost his mind. He took out a long whip from the magma and wrapped it around the head of a stone giant, pulling it directly into the magma. The remaining stone giant was also blasted into smithereens by the golden flames he shot out. Unappreciative brat. After dealing with the 2 stone giants, Ron Mill raised his whip and fiercely lashed it at Thea. The tip of the whip carried a large amount of flames. The golden flames were like countless tiny dragons attached to the whip. Thea did not dare to take on the flames that seemed to have a very high temperature. She jumped up and dodged the whip. However, she made a mistake. The other party's whip technique was sloppy and ordinary, but the flames were unique. The bright silver flames left the whip and wrapped around Thea. Haha, did you see that? This is my living flame. You should be honored to die under this move. In order to avoid this unknown flame, Thea could only continue to fly upwards. However, the flame seemed to have a consciousness and followed her movements. Interesting. This flame was very pure, a bit like a mutation of the soul flame. This Ron Mill most likely added the Martian's psionic ability to his divine domain of fire to obtain this strange flame. Sia tried several spells in a row, but the flame storm was directly neutralized by the living fire. The dungeon spell, which could withstand the impact of several tons of power, was also burned through. It had almost no hindrance. Carrying the holy sword that was getting heavier and heavier, her mobility was severely limited. She had no choice but to use the ring of lanterns to wrap the flame. Thea directly opened a portal and threw both the ring of lanterns and the living flame to a remote planet. She planned to study it carefully after the battle. Ron Mill, who was trapped in the magma and could not move, silently made up his mind when he saw that his long-range attacks were ineffective. He opened a portal in the void. The ink-like darkness shrouded the surroundings, as if the essence of death filled the underground cavern. Ron Mill withdrew his flame-giant form and merged with the darkness. His voice was no longer burning like firewood. Instead, it sounded a little ethereal. "Look, this is death. I don't care which god you are destined to fall here today." In the thick darkness, there was only a little bit of light. That was the holy sword in Thea's hand. She looked around with interest. The same thing would have subtle differences in the eyes of different people, not to mention the invisible and intangible thing like death. Thea had never seen a god who dared to say that he had control over death. However, looking at it from different angles, she had some insights. Ron Mill seemed to have gained inspiration from the extermination of his race. The thick ink in front of her was his experience. Darkness is death. Thea felt that Ron Mill most likely understood it this way. And it was not only the darkness. He had also borrowed the Martian's psionic ability and added countless dangers to the darkness. With the help of the Holy Sword's perception, Sia saw countless shadow beasts wandering in the darkness. She had never seen any of these beasts before, and they were all abstract and in all kinds of strange forms. These should be the enemies that the Martians had eliminated over a long period of time. Many of the beasts had the characteristics of space flight, which deepened her guess. Thea was now a little hesitant.